Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People Stories. Today we have a very special episode for you, a compilation of some of the best entitled people stories we've read over the past year. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a few hours of the most entitled people you've ever heard of. And by the way, Karen assured me that for every thumbs up this video gets, she won't try to get anyone fired for an entire week. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. My son's teacher took his cell phone home and her kid broke it. Last week on Friday, my son, who's 10, got his phone confiscated at school. He was messing around with it during class, and the school rules are clear about phone usage during class without permission, so I totally understood. The normal protocol is that the phone would go to the office where it would be returned to the student at the end of the day or the next day. His teacher, however, apparently forgot to stop by the office before going home after school, so she accidentally took it home with her, and through some negligence, the phone broke in the hands of her toddler. Admittedly, she was very upfront about it, and even came to our house personally to tell us what had happened and to apologize, which I do respect. She suggested the repayment plan for the phone and offered an old phone of hers for him in the meantime, but it was essentially a brick with a screen. After she left, I sent an email to the school about everything, simply because I think it is something the school should be involved in, since she's a teacher and easily took home a confiscated device, albeit by mistake. Received a response Monday morning apologizing for what had happened and promising to address the issue. So my sister-in-law works at the high school but smokes with the teachers at the junior high, which is where she bumped into this teacher who was upset and said that we were being jerks reporting it since she already promised to pay me for the phone, offered an alternative, and is a good teacher, so we're messing with her career unnecessarily. So yeah, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Taking it home accidentally could be understood to a degree. There's zero reasons why it should have been within her toddler's reach. Info. OP, did you actually see the broken phone? Maybe it's just my suspicious little brain, but there was a similar post a while ago where everyone heavily suspected the teacher of stealing the phone and trying to give a crappy phone back as a payment. The original phone was not actually broken, the teacher kept it. Although this teacher offering a payment plan suggests that they're willing to completely pay you for a new phone, not just to steal and give you a crappy phone back. OP. Yeah, it's busted. Screen severely cracked, and that weird ink of dead pixels is blocking 3/4 of the screen. Looking at the damage now though, unless her toddler is the next Hulk, I'm starting to doubt that that was the cause since he had a protector in a case. Not the jerk. The teacher did not follow guidelines, albeit your son was in the wrong. However, phone's prices scale and she had no reason to take it home with her. How her toddler then got a hold of it and broke it is a completely different issue. Teacher is upset she got in trouble for not following the rules, just like your son was upset his phone was taken for not following the rules. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the teacher? Please let us know. If she took that phone home by accident, she should have made sure it was in a safe place. That teacher messed around and found out. Am I the jerk for yelling at my husband for making my daughter feel bad? So my oldest daughter, who I'll call May, is 16. She has a job, has had it for about 5 months. Out of all of my kids, she's the most mature. She's also good at saving, but she rarely spends money on things she enjoys and instead keeps it all in her bank account. My husband wanted to have her start paying her phone bill immediately. It would have been about $50 a month, but I said no and eventually compromised to the beginning of October. Note, my husband, her stepfather, is very money tight and he tells her to pay for everything she wants. Now, I agree with this somewhat, as she should be monetarily responsible so she's ready for college, but he wants her to pay for everything. Anytime she asks for something, he'll respond with, "You have money, buy it yourself." Now, fast forward to today. May has been out of town on a trip with her class, and she was going to be gone for a week. Because this is a national event that happens every year, and they're in the city, everything is very expensive. She has a credit card under her name that's connected to my account, and I said she could use it for her meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But snacks and souvenirs she would have to buy on her own. She called earlier, and we were talking while my husband was in the room. She started complaining about how expensive everything was, and she jokingly said that she was going to go bankrupt once she returned from her trip. I told her not to worry about it, and if she needed, she could use her credit card for whatever. Then my husband pipes in and says, Stop guilting your mother to give you money. Whatever you want, you can buy yourself. She was quiet for a moment before saying that she wasn't asking for anything. And then he repeated, Don't guilt your mother. How can you be morally okay with that? She said she wasn't calling to ask for money, that she just wanted to complain and that she was going to hang up. I took her off speaker to tell her it was fine, but she just swore up and down she wasn't trying to guilt me and that she was just going to pretend the call never happened and that it was fine. And then she hung up. I was so upset that I yelled at him. I told him he was being ridiculous and that she was still a kid. I left before he could respond. I'm still angry. She apologizes to me every time she buys a meal because she thinks it's too much. I've noticed that she buys her own breakfast and only spends money on lunch and dinner, even though I've said she can do all three. I'm angry and I don't know what to do. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk for yelling at your husband, but you are the jerk for continuing to be in a relationship with someone who dislikes your kid this much and makes her feel guilty for her existence and the associated costs. You need to make it clear that if he doesn't change his behavior immediately and completely, you'll be out the door. That's something I don't think is truly highlighted. He's literally making her feel guilty for existing in their lives. She's 16. You should be paying for her meals and things she needs for school and life. He's definitely a, you can stay here and pay rent and utilities at 18, or you can find a new place to live kind of man, and that's just unacceptable. I have a brother who's in his 40s and doesn't pay his own cell phone bill. He's on my parents' plan and it's $10 a month. So I don't know what plan your daughter is on that it's $50 unless your jerk husband thinks she has to have her own plan just so he can then turn around and decide to stop paying for it. You're the jerk for marrying a man that treats your daughter this way. She's 16. You're responsible for feeding her and should be paying all of her expenses, within reason, until at least 18. Let her save her money to build a future. If I was her, I would save every penny to get away from that horrid man. Choose your daughter. You're the jerk. He's trying to raise her to be independent and not to rely on others. Of course, all these leeches on Reddit aren't going to like him. Their parents never taught them to be independent, so they think there's something wrong with this style of parenting. Never ask a bunch of mentally unstable, lonely, depressed, confused internet dwellers for parenting advice. If it were up to them, your kids would grow up to be just as lonely and miserable as they are, watching anime and eating processed foods. Processed foods? My husband and I raised all 4 of our kids to be independent, and now they all have a few things that these Reddit bozos don't have. What's that, you ask? A job, a family, and a purpose in life. Edit. Get mad all you want, bozos. You know I'm right, and the truth hurts. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. What I want to know is who peed in that guy's Cheerios. My failure to plan is now your problem. So I work in customer service in the automotive industry. As part of the services we offer guests, we perform a state-mandated car inspection so people can register their cars within the state. It's a simple process that can take about 15 minutes if you book an appointment with us. But every month, we get flooded with people who forgot to do the inspection on the last week of each month. It's a mad dash for last-minute appointments to fit people in before they're late. Now, we don't make money off this type of service. In fact, it's a state-set fee, and we realistically lose money doing these inspections on labor cost. I preface this to state that doing these state inspections does not benefit my shop, but we do it because it helps our customers. Front door opens to a male Karen coming in on a Friday afternoon midday. This distinguished gentleman, we'll call him Tim, walks in at around 1 p.m. in the afternoon and slaps his keys on the countertop, informing my front counter teammate that he needs an inspection now. Now understand that even though all of our appointments were booked up days ago, we will still bend over backwards to help someone out. We totally get that things don't always go according to plans in life, so we do what we can to help. That is, as long as you're a nice person. When you start trying to dictate how we're going to help you, that does not fly at my store. Tim decided that today he was going to do exactly that. After we advised him he can either wait almost 2 hours to try to work him into a slot as we process our already scheduled appointments or book an appointment with him next week. Tim let us know that booking an appointment the following week after the deadline was not an option for him. But he's got time right now, so he's going to generously give us 2 hours of his time, and we need to figure out how to get him in. Cue malicious compliance. I stepped in to take over the conversation for my front counter staff who have been dealing with him up until now. Okay, sir, we're happy to help. I'll get your keys out to the technician. You just have a seat and make yourself comfortable. Immediately, I walked the keys out to my technician with explicit instructions. After explaining to my tech that Tim is acting like a total jerk, I gave the express instructions that we will not even touch his vehicle until 2 hours have passed. Mind you, as Tim sits in the lobby stewing, I have the pleasure of servicing several other customers who set their appointments days ahead of time. 15 minutes here, 20 minutes there, and even a 7-minute inspection for an all-electric car. Things are flowing so smoothly for all of the appointments who did things the right way, and it's showing on Tim's face. After the first hour, Tim finally has the courage to speak up. I really appreciate y'all trying to work me in, but do you know how long it's going to be? No, Tim, you don't get to be nice now and try to expedite your vehicle. You don't get to be nasty to my staff and still get your way. Sorry, Tim, we're still trying to get it fit in. Like I said, about 2 hours before we can see the truck. Mind you, the lobby's totally empty, and all customers have already been serviced already. It's perfect. Fast forward another hour, and his multiple attempts to make small talk to amend his horrible manners and treatment to one of my staffers, and his car's finally being brought into the shop bays. When moments later, my technician walks into the lobby with a giddy smile. Boss, his truck needs wipers to pass inspection. They're torn, and they fail the vehicle. Passing on this wonderful news to Tim, he agrees to have the tech install some because he, of course, did not bring any of his own. At this point, I feel quite satisfied that Tim's learned his lesson with a little additional help from the universe and him needing to also replace his wiper blades. But apparently, the universe was not quite done teaching Tim a lesson. His car still failed the inspection. The last part of the test is run by a computer that reads the internal control modules of the car. It's a totally automated process that can't be tampered or affected by the inspector. The only thing that can interfere is if the car has had the battery replaced and those control modules have been reset. But that's exactly what Tim did. Hours before coming to see me, he replaced the battery and cleared those exact modules. So at the end of the day, Tim was his own worst enemy and failed his own car, having to book an appointment for the following week. With a little help from the universe, he hopefully learned a very valuable lesson that service workers are not your slaves and to always tip your waiters. Am I the jerk for telling my fiance she can either have me at our wedding or her best friend and their dogs? Throw away fake names. Jessica, 30 female, and I, 29 male, are getting married next year. We've been doing the wedding planning, got places and things picked out. It's been going good until we hit this snag. Abby is Jessica's best friend and maid of honor. Both love dogs. They both have dogs. When we started talking about the wedding, Jessica told me all about this plan they both had, that when each of them got married, they'd have doggy wedding ceremonies between their dogs and the future husband's dogs at the same time. I don't have a dog, not a dog guy, so there's no potential for that to happen. I like her dog enough and let her do what she will with him, and I do get him treats and toys sometimes. I thought that would be the last I heard of that. She and Abby started to talk about how cute it would be to include both of their dogs in our wedding party. Not my thing, but I have friends and family that have done something similar, and I want her to enjoy the day. So I said okay, thinking they'd just be up at the altar or something like that. Nope, they want their dogs to get married during our wedding. I wasn't too keen on the idea and raised concerns, like what would they do with both dogs for the rest of the day? What if the venue we picked doesn't allow pets? We went back and forth, and I agreed that they could do their dog ceremony at the end of our ceremony. A couple weeks later, Jessica and Abby bring it up again. They want parts of the reception to be dedicated to their dog's friendship. Crap like puppy picture slideshow, a cake for them, dog-friendly favor bags because they want their friends and her family to bring their dogs too. I told them no, and that I already made one compromise on the issue, and we don't want a bunch of dogs around for the entire wedding and reception, and that if they did that, we'd have to find an all-new venue probably. I reminded her that she was near the limit of what she could contribute towards our wedding funds, and I'd be paying the rest, and I don't want to pay extra for stuff for a bunch of dogs. They both said that this was really important to them, so I told Jessica point blank, we can stick to what we originally agreed to, or she and Abby could have their costly party that allows dogs by themselves, and we'd just get married at the courthouse by ourselves. Abby told Jessica I was being manipulative and making ultimatums and wanted her to go stay at her place until OP pulls his head out of his backside. Jessica didn't go, but we're still going back and forth. She still wants things her way and feels I'm being too selfish. I don't think I am, because I want an enjoyable wedding and marriage with Jessica, not Jessica and Abby and their pets. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. What did I just read? A doggy wedding? What's wrong with people? Dogs are animals, not babies. This level of obsession with an animal would freak me out, and I would, personally, nope out of the relationship. Not the jerk. But it is wild that your fiancé is prioritizing this over your actual wedding. She's making the day about her and her friend and sidelining you almost completely. Her best friend is making the day about her. That's such bizarre overstepping, and the fact that your fiancé doesn't see that is really concerning. Her friend should be supporting your fiancé and you, not undermining your wedding plans to turn it into a party for her dog. I would honestly postpone the wedding altogether because this is a terrible glimpse into your fiancé's priorities. You rank below her best friend's dog. Not the jerk. Who's Jessica marrying, you or Abby? This dog idea is over the top, but could be cute if it was your dog marrying Jessica's dog. It's really weird to me that Jessica's marrying you and her dog is marrying Abby's dog all at the same time, more or less. And Jessica is talking about taking so much time out of a day celebrating her commitments to spending her life with you to celebrate her friendship with Abby via their dogs? That's not the point of a wedding. And what about the guests who don't have dogs, are allergic to dogs, or are terrified of them? Are they less important guests? Most of the time, childhood dreams about our weddings don't come true. We marry cat people instead of dog people. We come to value homes over expensive parties and realize we can't dance. It's time for Jessica to let this one go. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife and her best friend? Please let us know. Bro, are you seriously still going to marry her after all of this? Nice lady at the store takes advantage of my beauty guru skills. Okay, so I work as a software engineer. Our company has a small office at a skyscraper plaza that's directly connected to a huge shopping mall. It's usually where us corporate slaves go to get our lunches. I also like to spend my breaks walking around the mall. It helps me take a breather away from the stuffy office air, and it's good for waking me up. Seriously, fellow corporate slaves, take a walk during your breaks if you have a falling asleep during shift problem. Also, try to replace it with water if it's your fourth cup of coffee for the day. But mainly I like these walks because I can do some window shopping and plan for whatever unnecessary things I'm going to buy for the end of the month when I get my paycheck, so that my uncooked chicken rinkless brain can squeeze out the tiniest drop of dopamine juice and I can finally feel something. And again, on one of these lovely days, just a few hours before I have to meet with my IT team, I decided I'd take another one of these walks and visit a beauty store. Now, I'm not really sure if this type of store exists outside of my country, but it's basically a supermarket only for makeup and other beauty products, so it's the main go-to place if you need something of that sort. I'm also dressed very businesswoman, straight out of a dark academia Pinterest board, but with a little touch of grunge and e-girl fashion influences on it. I'm really showing my age here, but dear readers, I promise I am a very serious businesswoman and do serious business with very serious clients. I just like to add a bit of self-expression into every outfit, with the accessories and the makeup and other small details, even if it is for work. But at the end of the day, I'm wearing a shirt, a blazer, and work pants basically. Well, while I'm browsing the store for something that can help me try to replicate the mermaid core look I found on TikTok, I suddenly hear a middle-aged lady call out to me with a meek voice asking for help. Now, I know I talk big, but I really am no makeup expert. My major was computer science and engineering, where 5 out of every 3 persons enrolled were male. During my studies, sometimes I would see a girl in the mirror, which was me, and get a jump scare because I hadn't seen a girl in so long. But ever since I graduated and started working full-time, I've been trying to re-explore the feminine side of myself, and I've been watching all kinds of beauty gurus, style experts, makeup review and get ready with me videos, so I know a thing or two. And this lady seemed really confused about a lot of things. She was holding 2 different blush colors and asked for testers. Nobody in the country has put out any testers since March 2020. I told her they don't make testers anymore, and her best bet was to search for the brand online and see if any influencer made a review with swatches. She looked sad. I took a peek in her basket, and there was another mess going on in there. She had a Maybelline burgundy bar and a few different lipstick colors, which were mostly cool-toned, all sharp reds and pinks, and she was a very warm-toned person with a goldenish glow to her. Honestly, when she heard the no testers, she looked so meek and small and sad that I had to help her. Firstly, I talked her out of buying any Maybelline eyeshadow palette ever because they're flaky and unpigmented. Then I researched online to show her blush colors for certain brands that I know are good quality, which was definitely not the one she was holding onto at first. I also advised her to pick lipstick colors to match the blushes or else she'd look like a mess. I basically took her around the store to build her a beginner makeup kit with all of the essentials, considering her skin type and her general color complexion. When we were done, she looked so happy that she insisted she'd take me to the cashiers for my commission. At this point, I'm thinking she must be foreign. No store like this in our country has ever had a culture of giving commissions to employees. This is when my brain finally computed. She didn't ask me for help because my highlighter looked bomb or anything. She thought I worked there. The staff does have a uniform, but it's likely that my outfit made me seem like a manager. Well, darn. I really don't work here, but by now I'm in too deep and way too embarrassed to tell her. I just mumble something incoherent, and before she can say she couldn't hear me, I duck away. Thankfully, the store was very crowded. Am I the jerk for going to a restaurant she likes, but I don't order food? We were deciding what to eat, and she really wanted to go to this restaurant. I was on board with it, but I'm super picky and had no idea what this restaurant had. We got there, I looked at the menu, and nothing looks even semi-good. For example, all of the sandwiches had wheat bread only, and I hate wheat. Anyway, I let her order her food, and when the lady asked what I wanted, I told her that I wasn't eating. I told my girlfriend I wanted her to enjoy the meal, and I was happy to be there. My girlfriend got so mad, got up and left. I left with her and asked what the big deal was. She insists that I need to be there eating with her. We ended up going somewhere else together, but it irritated me. Am I in the wrong here? Update. It was some French cafe. I've never been to a French restaurant, but I was willing to check it out. Their menu wasn't very big. I just wanted her to enjoy a nice meal. Update. There was no waitress. We ordered at the counter, and they put the food on our tray. Also, we had been together for 10 months, so I don't think there's much to feel awkward about. Update. I have no allergies. For the most part, I can usually find something to eat at a restaurant, but this French restaurant had nothing worth eating, in my opinion. I didn't Google the menu beforehand because we've never gone to a restaurant that I couldn't find something to eat. This was a lunch, not a dinner. Okay, so I just learned that all bread is made of wheat. We are all smart in different ways. It was some type of whole grain or sourdough. What I meant to say is I only like white bread, but brioche buns are good too. 10 months into the relationship, and we never went to a place where I couldn't find something to eat. This was the first time this happened. Also, I do try new things. I'm not stubborn with it, but usually it's me trying her food because I only order things that I know I will like. I don't like wasting food, nor my money. You're the jerk. Picky eaters are so exhausting. Sharing a dining experience with them is so limiting and seems like half the time they will just want to go to the same limited choices over and over. It's different if someone has dietary restrictions because of medical issues, religion, or they're vegan or vegetarian. Restrictions like that are easy to understand, and there's reasoning behind them, and eating can be planned accordingly. Someone just wanting nuggies and hating on wheat bread is a nightmare. Go try something new. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his girlfriend? Please let us know. Never go to a restaurant that doesn't have nuggies. Wee. Oh, my paper isn't long enough? Okay. So in my junior year, I was taking an art history class on medieval art and architecture. Partway through the course, the professor assigned a paper, and the instructions were that the paper length was to be 5 to 9 pages. I wrote my paper, and it ended up being 5 pages. I said everything I felt was necessary to say in that amount of pages. When I got the paper back, I received an A-. Now, I'm not usually the type to complain about an A-, but in this case, I knew I wrote a strong paper. I was an art history major, and at this point, I was 3 years into my program. So I had a buttload of art history classes under my belt, and I knew when I produced a good art history paper. So I really wanted to hear why I got the minus instead of a straight A. I went to the professor's office to ask why he graded it as such. Yes, he was quite amused someone was complaining about an A-. I didn't give a hoot. I wanted to know why he took off points and what he thought could have been improved. He hemmed and hawed for a few minutes because there wasn't anything wrong with my paper, and finally he said, "Well, it could have been longer." I said, "The prompt said 5 to 9 pages, and I was within that range." He replied, "It could have been longer." Okay then. Next paper that came around was the term research paper, and this time the prompt said at least 15 pages. Cue malicious compliance. I worked my butt off writing this research paper, and out of pure spite, I made this dude read no less than 29 pages about some stupid medieval church. Now I had written papers this long before, and a year later when I wrote my honors thesis, it was nearly 4 times that length. But for this particular topic, I was really stretching it. The verbosity was a bit ridiculous. A week or two later, he returned the paper A+ grade. He handed it to me and said with a genuine smile, "It was great. I loved it. You should submit it for publication to the XYZ History Journal." I begrudgingly submitted my maliciously compliant paper to the journal, and it was accepted and published. Admittedly, I was probably the one that suffered the most from my own malicious compliance, but I didn't care, and I'd do it again. Am I the jerk for telling my husband to get rid of our son's dog? I've been terrified of dogs since I was young. My husband knew, but I don't think he realized how bad it was until recently. He got our son a dog, and at first, I was angry, but he promised it wouldn't come near me, and our son was really happy, so I agreed they could keep it as long as it was kept away from me. For 2 months, it was fine, and I barely thought about the dog being so close, but a few days ago, the dog came inside and it freaked me out. I told my husband he had to get rid of it now, since he broke his promise, and I didn't trust him to keep it away from me anymore. My husband doesn't want to get rid of it because our son is very attached to it already, and the dog is harmless according to him. He wants me to let him take me around the dog so that I'll stop being so scared of it, but I refused and told him it has to go. We argued, and he told me that if I wanted it gone, I would have to take it myself. My in-laws came to visit yesterday, and my mother-in-law asked me if something had happened between us because I'm still angry at him and she noticed. I told her about the dog, and she told him off and said she taught him better than to traumatize his pregnant wife. Now my husband is upset at me because he thinks I only told his parents to force him to do what I wanted and that our son wouldn't be okay if we got rid of the dog now. Am I the jerk? Everyone sucks here. If your phobia is that bad and you are unwilling to address it, you should never have allowed a dog to stay even one night. Your husband never should have gotten the dog without your consent. And the breeder or rescue never should have allowed him to have a dog without knowing all adults in the home were on board. Now your son and a dog will be hurt because of your collective actions. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. Oh, my heart goes out to their son and that dog. Want me to cancel all your subscriptions? Yeah, I can do that. I used to work at a call center for one of the biggest teleproviders in our country. Mobile subscriptions, internet, landlines, all that. The call center I worked at was also only for business clients and not private customers, so it was not unusual for a client to have a lot of mobile subscriptions. One thing to note, I'm not sure how changing a mobile provider in other countries works, but in my country, you have to get the other company you want to transfer to order the numbers from where you are now to them. You cannot cancel your subscription and then have it transferred. If you cancel your subscription, it stops working right away. If you want to transfer after that, then you need to order a reopening of the subscription on that phone number for it to be able to transfer to the other teleprovider. And the reopening is treated as a new order and a new subscription, so it's an ordeal to go through. Also, and this is important for the story, if you have a debt collection case for an invoice with the teleprovider you are currently at, you will then no longer be able to get new subscriptions with that company until the debt collection is paid in full. Now on to the story. I get a call in from a customer who had maybe 10 to 15 mobile subscriptions with us, as well as an internet subscription, and apparently they worked with sales. The customer was very angry on the phone. He tells me that they have received a debt collection case from us for an invoice they had not paid, which was true. There was an invoice in our systems that they had not paid, and it had indeed gone to collection. He then told me that he knew about the invoice, but had just not bothered to pay it. What did you expect to happen if you didn't pay it? He then proceeded to berate me for sending them a debt collection and demanded that we cancel it immediately. One other thing to note is that none of the people that worked on the floor of the call center have the authority to cancel the debt collection cases. We need to send a case to another department for that. He would not let me send a case, nor would he let me call a supervisor to maybe expedite things. He said that I should cancel it right away or he would cancel all of their subscriptions right this second. Cue malicious compliance. Normally, when people threaten to cancel their subscriptions because of reasons, they mean they want to transfer to another provider, and I usually refer them to contact that other provider so they can start the process. This time, however, since the customer was being a jerk, I did not do that. I asked point blank, me, do you want to cancel your subscriptions with us immediately? Customer, yes. Me, are you sure? Him, yes. Me, okay then, I will cancel all your subscriptions right this second. Good, jerk. Then he hung up. I logged the call with every detail that he had said and asked me to, and added an extra line of, if any doubts, just listen to the recording of the call. I got at it and went ahead and canceled all of the subscriptions this client had with us. All of them, even their internet subscription. After about an hour, one of my coworkers got a very angry call from the client, who was forced to call from another phone because, guess what? Their subscription was canceled. I was done for the day, so I just went home, but my coworker filled me in the next day. The client had yelled and screamed that they were no longer able to call out or receive calls, as well as their internet was down. He had read the log I created and informed the client that they had terminated our services, so of course they would not receive any calls, nor make them. They demanded that we reopen the subscription again so that they could do their work, but again, my coworker had to inform them that it would not be possible since they had a debt collection case that needed to be paid first, or else none of the orders they put in would go through. After more screaming and losing it, my coworker had to end the call. The next day, I had the evening shift, but I had saved the client's information to see if anything else had happened. Apparently, the debt collection got paid and the subscriptions were reopened. They also had ordered a transfer to another provider. I have no idea how much money was lost, but for a sales team to not be able to work for over 24 hours, I can only guess that it was a lot. Also, as a cherry on top of things, they were in a contract period with us, which means that they get a small discount on their subscriptions if they are with us for a set period of time. If they break that contract, which they did when they told me to cancel their subscriptions as well as transferring to another provider afterwards, they had to pay a fee of over $300 per subscription. That was at least $4,500 on top of what they lost the 24 hours they couldn't do anything. All because they didn't want to pay a $30 late fee. Karen tells me how to raise my kid. I, 24 female, have a 3-year-old son named Cass, who's the light of my life. He's a real sweetheart, and if he had it his way, he'd be carried around in my arms all day long and only put down when we come across a cool bug. He doesn't talk very often. It's something that I was worried about in the beginning because as a young mom, I worried about almost everything. But the pediatrician told me that he'll likely become more talkative over time. I'm currently looking into speech therapists just to see if that will help a bit, and we're currently learning sign language too, so Cass can switch to that when he doesn't feel like using his voice. He's such a smart kid, and he's so curious about everything. All he ever wants to do is explore and learn about new things. I'm so proud of him, and I love being his mom and getting to see the world through his eyes. My mom, 50 female, doesn't like the approach I've taken to my son's tendency to not speak very often. There have been a few times where he'll clearly be asking for something and she'll refuse because he isn't using his voice. It's one of the main reasons why I never ask her to babysit, because it bothers me when she does that and I stop it every time. We were all at a restaurant with my stepdad, 55 male, my stepbrother, 30 male, his wife, who's 30, and their son, James, who's 4. When it came time to order, I read some options out to Cass and he signed yes for the meal he wanted. James spoke to the waiter on his own. When the waiter walked away, my mom got upset with me. She said that because I'm the parent, I need to tell Cass to get over his stubborn attitude about speaking and that his refusal to do so is ridiculous. My stepdad then expressed concerns about the fact that James was saying full sentences by 2 years old, but Cass is 3 and he'd only ever heard him say about 5 words. I told them both that I didn't appreciate them trying to have that conversation with me in front of Cass and at a family lunch, but then my mom said that if Cass had an issue, he should use his voice to tell them that, instead of relying on me to do it for him. I ended up flagging the waiter down and asking for my part of the bill, and if I could get the food to go, because I didn't think this was fair for my son to have to sit there and listen to them talk about him like he couldn't even understand what they were saying. Once I paid and got the food, we went home. My mom texted me later saying that I'm doing my son a disservice by not making him speak, that it was rude of me to leave lunch like that just because I didn't like the way the conversation was going, and that it speaks to my immaturity. Truthfully, if I had pushed him to do it, I know he would have verbalized what he wanted, but he clearly felt more comfortable signing, so I didn't feel the need to do that. Regardless, was it an immature/jerk move to leave like that? Edit. Cass is fully capable of speaking. He has said a full sentence before. He just doesn't talk very often, and especially not in front of other people or in public. Like I said, I've spoken to his pediatrician. I'm currently looking for speech therapists, and I've been thinking about getting him assessed for a while now. I'll just have to bring it up to the doctor. Cass uses sign. He has vocab cards and flashcards, and he already knows how to spell all of his favorite words. We work on his words all the time. It's one of his favorite things to do. No, the biological dad isn't involved. It's just Cass and me. Edit 2. I don't mean to sound offensive or anything, but please read the first edit before telling me what I should be doing for my son. I've spoken to his doctor multiple times. I'm looking for a speech therapist. I've been looking into getting him assessed. I offer him multiple different methods of communication. I encourage him to speak when I know he's comfortable to do so. Also, he knows more than 5 words. My stepfather just stated that he's only ever heard Cass say about 5 words. Cass has a large vocabulary. He just doesn't verbalize it often. Absolutely not the jerk. I have a kid who's on the autism spectrum and has selective mutism. The situations you are describing sound so familiar to me, and the absolute worst thing you can do is try to push the issue and force them to talk. Not only will it not work, it can make the issue worse. You're doing right by your child. Your mother is being an ignorant jerk. OP. I've actually been thinking about getting him evaluated. If he is on the spectrum, I want to be able to accommodate him in whatever ways he might need and learn as much as I can to make things easier for him. It's definitely worth considering getting him assessed. Maybe it isn't autism, but if you go through the process, then at least you will know and maybe gain a better idea of what's going on and how best to support your son. Sign language is a great tool to use to assist in communication when they're unable to find words, regardless of any potential underlying concerns. It sounds like you're doing a great job as a parent. Not the jerk. You're an excellent mom. Your mom, however, is a total jerk. You're already a better mom than you ever had. You're a rock star for not taking their manipulation and judgment. Not the jerk. This is why I went no contact with my parents. They never stopped telling me how I should be raising my kids. The way I see it, if French fries and chicken nuggets is all they want to eat, then just let them eat it. At least they're eating something. I couldn't stand being forced to eat steak and veggies growing up, so I would never make my kids eat it. My boomer parents flipped out about the language my kids used. What am I supposed to do? Take their phones away so they can't learn certain words that might upset people? Same thing with bedtime. I hated having to go to bed at a certain time, so I decided early on my kids would go to sleep when they chose to. They still usually go to sleep by midnight, which is when I go to sleep too. I homeschool all of them in a natural way, so we wake up when our bodies tell us to, which is usually at about 11ish, and then we go for our morning walk in the woods. I don't teach them math and science, but I teach them the natural ways of life. The way I see it, I never actually used any of the crap they taught me in school, so I don't waste time teaching my kids any of it either. I teach them about plants and animals, love and light, what our roles are as light workers, and how it's up to us to light the path for all of the fools like my parents who are lost in the darkness. My parents will never get to have a relationship with my kids because their outdated beliefs make them monsters in my eyes, and I want nothing to do with them. There's a reason my kids need so much therapy, and it's not because of how I've raised them. It's the darkness that surrounds us. But as a light worker, I will never surrender. Well, who do you agree with? OP or Grandma? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for uninviting my sister-in-law and mother-in-law from everything? I'm 7 months pregnant with my first kid. The baby is also the first grandchild and nephew of my husband's family, which everyone is excited about. I lost my mother and father during lockdown, and being an only child, there's not much of my family. Since the passing of my parents 1 year ago, my husband's family has welcomed me with open arms as part of them, and I've become very close to my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. I always wanted to have a gender reveal, and I trusted my sister-in-law to organize everything about this. With 3 days to go before the party, I started to receive messages from all my husband's relatives and even close friends congratulating me on my baby being a boy. I went to ask what happened, and my sister-in-law confessed that she let it slip to my mother-in-law, and she told everyone that we were having a boy because she couldn't hold it in and it took proportions beyond what they imagined. Nobody called me to tell me this. The party was canceled and I was heartbroken, as well as extremely hurt by the two of them. Usually they accompanied me to the ultrasound, shopping for the baby's room, and my mother-in-law would stay at the time of delivery. But after this breach of trust, I stopped inviting them and asked them to respect my boundaries when they pressured me to go. Honestly, I didn't even send them the baby shower invite because I really avoided contact with them as much as possible because everyone knew before me that it was a boy. My husband started complaining that I was pushing them away because of a mistake that could happen and that I was being harsh. Yesterday, he brought this up, and when I said that I still didn't feel comfortable with them, he said, "Soon you'll tell me that my mother won't be able to go to the birth." I think my face showed my response, and he started saying I was being too hard on her because she was just excited and blah blah blah. I had my limit and said, "If you keep pushing me, it won't just be your mother who won't be on my labor. So either stop or you won't be there either." He started to say that I was crossing lines and that he had a right to have this moment. I was taking this with them too far. He slept on the couch and isn't talking to me more than necessary. Am I the jerk? Well, many are saying it's just a gender reveal. I honestly don't care for that, and I think it's tacky. But my mom was the type who liked and loved it, and she always dreamed of having grandkids. She said she was made to be a grandmother. She can't meet my son or even know I'm pregnant, so I wanted to do something tacky that I don't care for her, not for me. Everyone knew the importance and the reason. I always wanted to have a gender reveal with my mom there, and I didn't have either. Extra. Let's go to some points. At no time did I say that I would never approach them again, but right now I don't see myself doing that. I already have grief, pregnancy hormones, and day-to-day stress to deal with, so I don't want anything else to bother me. Obviously, I want my husband to be at my childbirth, but it's a lot of stress. He brings this topic up all the time, and I doubt he'll stop even at the time of my delivery trying to convince me. Even if he goes, if he says anything about his mother coming in, I'll ask him to leave. Your husband started complaining that you were pushing them away because of a mistake that could happen and that you were being harsh. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. Your sister-in-law made a choice and told mother-in-law. Mother-in-law then made a choice to tell everyone else in the family. Your husband is making the choice to pressure you into things, which is leaving you to make some choices of your own now. You are allowed to make your own choices. Nobody, not even the husband, has a right to be in the delivery room. May seem harsh, but it's true. The person going through the procedure has the choice of who gets to be in there. Birthing a child is not an all-access pass for everybody else who wants to be there. It's not a spectator sport. It's a medical procedure to get a little human out of another human. Not the jerk. Your sister-in-law slipping could have been an honest mistake. Your mother-in-law spreading it around was a concise choice. You may be going a little too far with your sister-in-law. Again, possible accident. But your mother-in-law made her choice and is now dealing with the consequences. Not the jerk. OP. About the slip-up, that's okay. But from what I understand, it happened the night before, and at no time did she come to talk to me about what had happened. I found out from others the gender of my baby, and I went after her to ask. If she'd let it slip and called me to let me know sometime after what she did, I wouldn't have been so upset. I think anyone would be upset. You can't unring a bell. You're still grieving your parents. You are happy and sad at the same time. It's confusing. I got pregnant with my son within a month of my father passing from lockdown. Baby is almost 1.5 now, and he's so amazing. I still get heartache, though, about my dad not being here and not meeting him. So the gender reveal was special to you because you were doing it in a way to connect with your mother. Tell mother-in-law and sister-in-law, I'm grieving my parents. I miss them so much, and it's hard knowing they'll never see me as a mother and never know the baby. The only reason I wanted a gender reveal is because it's something my mother would have loved, and you ruined it. It hurts because I'll never get it back, and my chance to feel close to my mom is gone. I need some space. I hope I can feel the same closeness to you as I did before this happened. That's what I want, and I want my baby to have a life with extended family in it. I'm not ready. I'm so sad. This is how I feel. Please, let's stop talking about it. Please stop talking to husband about it. I need his support. I'll reach out when I'm ready, but for now, I need to handle things on my own. I failed 27 out of 31 students for not taking a quiz. I teach a math class in 8th grade. Because the classroom is really small and there are so many people, they sometimes are a bit loud. But that's okay, and I try to give my best to accommodate them to be most comfortable. Wednesday, they were really loud, and I announced an online quiz because we did not come to the point to do it in class. I also stated that I would upload it on Thursday and it would be due on Friday at 6 p.m. It's not much, 10 questions, just to see where everyone is at, but it is graded. I repeated myself twice that it was mandatory and graded, and they did not listen apparently. I uploaded the quiz and 4 people actually took it. They received feedback and their grade. The rest did not take the quiz, so I gave them all a 0 today. In less than 15 minutes, the first student mailed me that I could not just fail him. A few students joined in complaining about the 0. Some of them apologized for not turning it in. Then a mother emailed me, how could I fail her precious daughter? And that if 27 people failed, it would mean my quiz was too hard and I would be a jerk to fail them all. Until now, I did not respond to any of these emails because then they would expect me to answer everybody. I'll do this on Monday. But I'm wondering, am I the jerk for failing them? Maybe for information, it's maybe 1% of their grade. Edit, because I realized I need to clarify something. They were allowed the entire period. Normally, this is not the case. I don't know what was different this day. This caused us to be slower than I planned and not being able to test where everybody stood on the topic. So at the end of the lesson, I told them that this quiz was being uploaded and that they would have to take it. They were not especially loud then, but some were distracted with packing their things and stuff. Edit too, because someone said it was important. It was written on the board. It was written in the class book. There's all this stuff written down in means of tasks and topics from their classes. Update. I just got another email from the same mother asking why I did not reply to her email since she wrote the first email a few hours ago. I love parents. Last edit. Because I can't answer every single comment, thank you all for your judgments. While there were many helpful and respectful comments with constructive feedback, I'm really shocked that people insult me as a person for an action I post here. I do not talk about the "you're the jerk" judgments. I take them. I talk about the ones telling me that I'm a horrible person, a bad teacher, or even insinuating that I'm mentally sick, via comments and via private messages. Maybe think before insulting someone for one single action without knowing what else happens in my classes and life. Now to the quiz. They knew how to do it. They did it often before. They won't fail the whole class because of it. Also, I'm not responsible for telling their parents to remind them of a quiz. They're old enough to remind themselves. Many suggested that they could retake the quiz. They can, but not for full credit and not in class. I'll tell them on Monday, and it will be due Wednesday morning at 8 a.m., also online. As it is a simple 10-question multiple-choice test you can do in 10 minutes on your phone, that is more than enough time. Also, an update on the mother emailing me twice. I got an email from her daughter telling me how she was sorry that her mom messaged me as she panicked as her mom saw a 0 and told her that the quiz was too hard because she forgot about the quiz and therefore did not take it. Edit. The insults continue, and so does the teaching advice from some people here, again in private and in the post. To make it clear to you, I accept every single "you're the jerk" statement as everyone is entitled to their own opinion. But I do not need your advice on classroom management, my teaching skills, or my personality for asking a judgment of one specific situation. The situation is this one quiz, not my general teaching, because you don't know my teaching style, as you only got told this one single situation. Also, yes, I get it. This post has language errors. Surprise, I am no native English speaker, as I stated before. Teacher here. Let the 0 stand, or you're teaching them that refusing to work and then complaining about it is acceptable. Give them an in-class assignment that is 1, basically the same thing, and 2, worth enough points that it brings up their averages. You could even give them the exact same thing, and the kids who did it the first time get a double benefit since they already got the points and the feedback. Not the jerk. They're in school to learn more than math. This is a teachable moment. Not the jerk. Professor here. Please let the 0 stand. Otherwise, they learn that they can bully their way through a class. If it was on the board, you announced it, and several students completed the quiz, they had sufficient notice. As another teacher, it sounds like we need some better classroom management skills, my man. I understand that middle school can be tough, but you gotta have high expectations for them and set limits. If these knuckleheads can't follow directions, you're just in your right to fail them. Well, what do you think? Should OP let the 0 stand or not? Please let us know. I could never stand it when all the other kids kept talking real loud and I couldn't hear the teacher. The classes I enjoyed the most were the ones where the teachers didn't allow that kind of stuff to happen. Call me crazy, but the strict teachers were my favorite ones. The ones where when you're talking and you're not supposed to be, they'll just stop whatever they're doing and stare at you until you stop. My dad's cousin's ex. Let me tell you a story about my dad's cousin. She's in her late 70s, early 80s. Well, she was married to a super high up of some company. They had 2 kids, but had a wonderful prenup. It was ironclad, where if they divorced, she got nothing but what was acquired during marriage, and he paid child support. If she cheated, she forfeits everything but child support. If he cheated, he had to pay her alimony and child support until she got remarried. No matter what she made, it was set that she got $5,000 a month alimony. After the kids were 18, her alimony went down to $2,500 a month if she still was unmarried. The man was loaded. Well, he cheated, and she got proof. Actually, his boss caught him and liked her, so he told her, even testified to it. Plus, he didn't deny it in court. He was having an affair with his young secretary. So she got alimony and child support. Well, years later, after she finished cosmetology school, she ended up opening up her own hair salon in the South. She has a lot of those upscale assisted living facilities, so now she's also loaded. She drives a super cute red convertible Mercedes. Well, they divorced when she was 30. She still has never remarried. He's still paying alimony. She has had a serious boyfriend for 30 years, but she said just to spite the ex, she will not remarry unless he passes. So he's been married 4 times since, but no matter what, because of his prenup, he insisted on, she still gets that $2,500 a month. Well, for at least 40 to 45 years, so far he's been paying. She said after what he did to her, making her give up her dreams and sign a prenup, she was going to make him pay. She did eventually go finish school and follow her dreams after the kids were grown. She's the nicest person too. His other wives were nowhere near as nice. He made sure his prenup granted them nothing but child support. Also, her boyfriend and her don't live together, but they have been neighbors for years. They both want their own space. He also has his own money. She doesn't even need her ex's money and just puts it in an account for her grandkids' college. She also likes to donate some to women's shelters. She donates it in his name so he gets notifications or notes that money was donated in his name. She says the day he passes, she and her boyfriend will go to the courthouse. Everyone in the family knows, and every time we see her, my father laughs and says, "So, the ex is still alive and paying?" Am I the jerk for telling my kids to borrow money from their sister, not me? I have 4 kids. Carmen, who's 32, Elisa, who's 28, Michael, who's 26, and Andrew, 21. Carmen and Michael are both lower middle class. Carmen is a single mom of 2 and works as a nurse. Michael and his wife are teachers and are expecting their first kid. Carmen makes $100,000 a year. Michael and his wife make a little over $100,000 combined, and we live in California near the Bay Area, where $100,000 is considered low income. Elisa is a nanny for an extremely rich family. I don't know if she's considered live-in because she lives in a separate house but on the same property. She makes $250,000 per year plus bonuses, doesn't pay for rent or utilities, rarely buys groceries because she always eats with the family. They bought her a brand new car. They pay for her gas, maintenance, all of her medical, dental, vision, etc. is 100% paid for by the family. They even pay for her gym membership and her vacations. She's worked for them for 2 years now and recently bought a rental building in cash. Needless to say, she's doing very well for herself. Michael and Andrew just asked me for money. Michael needs $30,000 for part of a down payment for a townhouse, and Andrew wants $10,000 so he can graduate with no debt. I told them to ask Elisa for money, not me, and that she could easily afford to help them out. Elisa called me the other day, asking what I said to her brothers because now they're both asking her for money. I told her what I told them, and she yelled at me for volunteering her to help with her brother's expenses. I told her that I never said she would help them, I just said that she easily could. She said she doesn't feel comfortable loaning money to family because she doesn't want to risk their relationship if they don't pay her back. I told her it shouldn't be a big deal if they don't pay her back because we know her Christmas bonus will be close to double what her brothers want. Plus, if she says no, she could potentially risk her relationship with her brothers because she can afford it. She hung up on me and hasn't spoken to me since, so I wanted to know if I was the jerk. You're the jerk. You basically reviewed your daughter's finances and deemed that she can afford to give thousands of dollars to your kids without even speaking to her. You could have simply said no to your sons. Instead, you created family drama among your kids. If I was her, I wouldn't share any of my business with you ever again. You seem to hold her success against her. She worked her butt off and made sacrifices to plan for her future. Working with wealthy people is exhausting. They are demanding and fickle. Kids are work too. Ugh. You're the jerk. Beyond what everyone else has said, being a nanny is by definition a time-limited job. The kids grow out of needing that level of care. The employer's circumstances change. Elisa may never again be so fortunate. She's wisely investing in the rental property and preparing for her own future. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. Never tell anyone how much money you make, especially your friends and family. I do work here, but also I live here, and this isn't PetSmart, lady. Recently, I have begun a dog walking and pet sitting business that I run out of my house with express permission from my landlord. I've worked with animals for years, and I'm grateful to finally be able to do it for a halfway decent living. That being said, I've been much busier than I anticipated, and as such, I've been a little stressed about overextending myself. I even had a nightmare about forgetting that I had to watch a dog, and the dog was left alone at their house for several days. Even though it was just a nightmare, this prompted me to get more serious about my organization and scheduling so I wouldn't miss anything. Nowadays, my schedule is rock solid and I've been super on top of it. I only say that so you guys can understand the immense confusion I felt when the doorbell rang at 2 p.m. on Monday and I heard a dog barking outside. I get my dogs calmed down and answer the door. On my doorstep is an elderly woman, maybe 80 years old, holding a very cute West Highland Terrier. For anyone not familiar, they're the dog on the Caesar dog food package. I'm honestly so confused by her being there that my mouth does not form words. I just sort of stand there, opening and closing my mouth like a fish out of water, while my brain is just screaming, "You forgot! You forgot!" After a moment, she graciously saves me from myself and talks first. I'll refer to her as LOL for little old lady.
Hello, I'm little old lady, and I'm here to drop off my dog for boarding.
At this time, I'm almost positive that my nightmares have literally come true, and I've straight up deleted a dog from my short-term memory. But as I'm racking my brain, I cannot remember ever seeing this dog or this woman before. Me. Hi, who is this little guy? Little old lady.
This is Chico. I was hoping to leave him with you for the weekend while I visit my grandson.
Okay, hoping. That's an interesting word. Now I'm less anxious, but more confused. Me. Okay, have we spoken about Chico before?
Oh no, but your neighbor Laura said you watch dogs, so I just brought him over.
Okay, now this is making more sense. Laura was my previous neighbor who had recently moved out. I had watched her dogs dozens of times, and she was always very kind to give my name out to people who were looking for dog sitters. Sometimes, however, she did treat me as on call, in the sense that she would call me as she was pulling out of her driveway to tell me she was leaving for the weekend and I would need to watch the dogs. She would play it off like she was so frazzled and forgot, but it started to get old after the third or fourth time. At this point, I have a little old lady with her energetic dog on my porch, and still more questions than answers. So I invite her in while I try to get to the bottom of it. Come to find out, little old lady was a friend of Laura's mother, whom I had never met. Laura had a couple of my business cards at her house, and apparently the last time her mother was visiting, she took a couple of them to give to her friends. Apparently, Laura inherited her entitlement from her mother, as her mother told little old lady I was available anytime for dog sitting. Literally anytime. Worse yet, because Laura was my next door neighbor, Laura's mom figured out my address and gave it to little old lady. Because of that behavior, little old lady had the impression that I was a dog boarding facility, and she was just as confused as I was to arrange at a normal-looking house. After we got it all explained, little old lady and I had a pretty big laugh about it. Little old lady was super apologetic and sweet, but I knew it really wasn't her fault, so there was no harm done from her. She was just a sweet old lady who got a little confused. Unfortunately, because I was already booked, I couldn't watch Chico. But good news. Little old lady determined she could just visit her grandson this weekend, and I went ahead and booked her for it. Chico and my dogs had plenty of time to socialize while little old lady and I were chatting, and they were becoming fast friends. I think I may have just fallen backwards into a great client. Still, I was a little upset, so I called Laura to please ask her mother to not tell people that they can just come by anytime. Laura was legitimately confused as to why it was an issue. After a few minutes of going around in circles, I simply said I can't watch any dogs that I don't know and left it at that. While I wish that was the end of it, 2 days later, Laura calls me to tell me that she has just left her house and could I please watch the dogs. I gently remind her that she had just moved 3 hours away and I was no longer her neighbor. She just gave a half-hearted, "Oh," and hung up. God bless her. Don't touch the iPad? You got it. Until recently, I worked at a fine dining restaurant. I was there for 3.5 years, and the majority of that time I was a busser. By the time I left, I was the most tenured person in the front of house by a fair margin, including managers, which we burned through ridiculously quickly. And everyone I directly worked with had good things to say about my work ethic and how I was with the guests. I could be abrasive as a person, but if I was in your section, you'd have a smooth night, professionally. Some background. Our restaurant was 90% reservation. One wasn't required, but if you wanted a table at a certain time, you made one. On occasion, we'd have walk-ins or someone wouldn't show up to their reservation, but the number of covers, people, you walked into was usually pretty spot on to what you'd end up doing. Most of them were for two, but we'd also take larger tables. If the night was all two tops, we wouldn't set up for anything else, and anything bigger than a four top, we'd have to push the tables together. Not an issue, but a little time consuming to make sure every server was cool with the placement. Setup took between 2 and 3 hours, depending on how busy we were. Lastly, you'd figure out how busy we were from an iPad the hosts used, or that's how I did it. One winter, we had a shakeup. We had a new manager from our corporate parent take an open spot for a short-term contract. We'll call him Dave, and he quickly became one of my favorite managers. He was pretty no-nonsense and respected that he didn't know how our restaurant ran. Thus, he was open to talking through our reasoning and basically expected that we were good at what we did, unless we proved otherwise. Our hosts were mostly young ladies, like still in or just out of high school. In several instances, it was a first job ever because the compensation was, and still is, pretty crappy. You'd get what you pay for, and many of them didn't have the refinement one would expect when paying over $100 a head before tax, tip, and alcohol. One, who we'll call Kay, was pretty protective of the iPad, at least when it came to me. When I came in, I would breeze up to the host stand, look at the numbers for a minute, then go set up. She, apparently, brought up that I would do this for no reason to Dave and to his boss, who told Dave to get me to knock it off so HR wouldn't have to mediate. That would have looked bad for basically everyone. She never got upset when anyone else looked at the spread of tables, but I digress. He asked why I was touching the iPad. I responded that I was looking at the numbers, the big tops, special requests for tables, stuff like that. He asked why I wouldn't wait until pre-shift for that. I told him that was 15 minutes before service. I might be able to change things in time if that happened, but I'd miss the rest of pre-shift, and if I had to put together tables, the restaurant would be at least partially not set. He asked specifically what I needed, and I told him a breakdown of the tables by time is what I looked at. He said he'd make sure I had one when I came in and told me not to touch the iPad again. Cool, that works for me. The next day I come in and it's waiting for me, handwritten because the app we use doesn't play well with printers. The day after, I asked him for it and he said he had forgotten he'd get it to me. Took him half an hour to write it out and double check that he didn't miss anything. The malicious compliance here is twofold. At some point between day 2 and 3, Dave realizes that he has other stuff to do rather than write out the spread of tables every day. He's been asked to not let me touch the iPad, and I've told him I won't. So he talks to Kay and tells her she needs to write it out, and it needs to be done by the time I get in, about half an hour after she does. She, like Dave, realizes it's a lot of work for something I'll look at for 30 seconds and asks him to let me look at the iPad again. Sorry, no can do. We've gotten complaints and we don't want HR to get involved. Kay comes to me and offers me the iPad when I get in. Sorry, I've been given a direct order. I'll take the spread when you're done writing it up though. I'd planned on relenting after a week, but the servers ended up loving seeing what was coming in, and it became a staple of the host's job from then on. Kay ended up quitting after getting into it with another manager, but her contribution of a handwritten spread by the host is still going strong as far as I know. I left my girlfriend stranded when she chose to ignore me. I, 27, went to a pumpkin patch with my girlfriend, who's 22, and a bunch of her friends. I was told it was a couples thing, but I was the only guy there. That's fine, I'm okay with her friends. I'm past the whole cutesy date thing, but I like making her happy. But then they all started ignoring me. Every time I tried to join in on a conversation or spend time with my girlfriend, I got frozen out, like I was intruding. I asked her if she wanted to go do the corn maze with me, and it was like I was some creepy guy at a bar. They all had to come along, like I was trying to separate her. I totally was, but I don't think that's a bad thing. Anyways, they all decided to split up in the maze, and my girlfriend went with them. Forget this noise. I could go catch the Seahawks game if I boogied, so I texted her that she had 5 minutes to respond to me or I was going back to town to watch the game and she could get a ride back with her friends. I was literally watching the second quarter before she responded. It took her that long to even notice that I was gone. She said her friend would have to drive really far out of her way to drop her off and that I should just come get her. I was definitely over the limit and I told her to get an Uber and I would pay for it. She said never mind and spent the night at her place instead. I just woke up to about 50 texts from her and her friends calling me a jerk for leaving without telling anyone. I did tell her, she just chose to ignore me. I'm kind of upset that I wasted all that gas and time and we never even got to actually spend the time together. I'm upset with her and her BS friends. Am I the jerk? Edit to provide answers to some common questions. We've been dating for about 6 months. Our age difference is roughly 3 years and 10 months. I didn't realize that made me a creep. I enjoy taking her out and having fun. She's just starting her career and I'm established in mine, so I like taking her out for fun stuff she enjoys. When I said I'm past the cutesy date thing, I meant that I would not be the one to suggest to date at a pumpkin patch. But she was a theater kid and I took her to see Hamilton. She loved it. I go out of my way to take her to things she will enjoy. And when we hang out with my friends, they all include her because she's awesome. My friends' wives and girlfriends all involve her in stuff too. This is the first time that she's behaved like this. The pumpkin patch had 5 bars of signal and all of them were posting constantly the entire time they were there. Edit number 2 because I can't do math. The difference in our ages is exactly 4 years and 37 days. Sorry. Edit 3. For those of you with a problem with our age difference, think of it as her robbing the grave, not me robbing the cradle. Not the jerk. She literally just used you as a free ride to her friend's get-together. Would not even be surprised if the girls were planning something shady and got upset that you showed up. You are over the cutesy phase, so I assume you guys are not together for long. If so, dump her. She's just using you until someone better shows up. Couples don't act like this. Honestly, he should dump her for being over the cutesy stage alone. My husband and I still do cutesy couple stuff a couple times a year because it's fun to be silly, and I love themed events. Not the jerk. In my opinion, she kind of tricked you into coming there, and after you went, she iced you out and ignored you, which is not okay. You gave her a heads up before leaving as well. Technically, she was not stranded as she had other company. Had you left her alone, this would be a different situation. But because she had company as well, I believe you are not the jerk at all. No, you're not the jerk. It was obviously a bad call on her part for her to coax you into going. She should have known how this situation was going to play out. Also, shame on her friends for treating you like an outsider. My friends and I always make sure to include our friends' significant others in conversations and activities because we all know what it's like to be the odd person out. Also, the fact that it took her that long to realize that you weren't there or to check her phone, to me, shows precisely where you rank in importance in her life. Then, because you didn't hang around like a good little puppy dog waiting patiently for her, she chose to talk crap about you to her friends all night, which I can guarantee is what they were doing, because that's what women do in groups together when they are angry. Your girlfriend sounds ridiculously inconsiderate. Not only do I think you're not the jerk, I think it's time to get a new girlfriend or to just go back to being single. I mean, if you're running into these kinds of problems with something this small and simple, imagine what things will be like when life gets really complicated. Do you really think she's going to step up to the plate and be a better person when she has shown herself to be like this? You're the jerk. You're 27 and she's 22? Seriously? What is it with you creepy dudes who refuse to date in your own age range? A 1 or 2 year difference is usually okay, maybe even 3, but a 5-year age gap? Just ew. If you can't get anyone in your own age range, just stay single. I can't even tell you how many guys in their 30s try talking to me on dating sites. I'm only 27, so the oldest I'll go is 29. And even that's stretching it, because he'll probably be a creep. Sounds to me like those guys on the dating site are dodging a bullet by you not responding to them. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his girlfriend? Please let us know. Dump her, bro. Find someone who, respects you as a person. Am I the jerk for not paying for a competition trip? I, 30 female, am married to my husband Joey, who's 34. We both have daughters from previous relationships. My daughter is Haley, she's 10, and his daughter is Jenna, she's 11. Both of our daughters are cheerleaders for different teams. We recently had their competition where the winners of first and second place go to compete in Disney. I've been saving all year since Haley's team is really competitive. Joey didn't save for it because Jenna is on a smaller town team that's not very competitive. Haley's team unfortunately did not win their competition this year. Jenna's team did win theirs. Haley, my husband, and I were all proud of her and congratulated her. Later that night, my husband asked me about finances for the Florida trip. We've always kept finances for the girls separate, as I pay for Haley and he pays for Jenna. I explained that since Haley's team didn't win, I figured her and I could do something instead with the money that I saved for Florida. Haley doesn't know this was my plan yet. My husband thinks I'm being selfish and a jerk because Jenna's team did win and we should use that same money for her to go. I think Haley could use a pick-me-up. I know people might ask about Jenna's mother and she's not able to help financially for Jenna to go. We have already spoken to her, and if any of the girls on the team cannot go to Florida, then the team has to forfeit. The team might do some fundraising, but the expenses will be on the parents. Am I the jerk? Edit to answer some questions. 1. We can't make it a family trip because there's not enough money. I had saved enough for myself and half of Haley's trip. Haley's father was paying the other half of her trip. 2. My husband doesn't believe in loans when it comes to family. 3. I did see some people ask how Haley would feel about it. Haley knows her dad and I save this money for her every year. Her dad and I go without some luxuries for a while, and she sees the sacrifices we go through. I don't ever regret it. However, I won't ask her to use that money for her stepsister because she shouldn't have to get in the middle. 4. My ex thinks we should do something nice for our daughter, either a small trip, a fun outing, or new clothes or shoes, etc. Just something fun, and then use the rest for the next cheer season or for her next big expenses. Update. Tonight my husband and I had another disagreement about the money. I did call my ex because I didn't want Haley to overhear any of the argument, and we decided it'll be best for her to spend the week with him. I'm going to go stay at my parents' house for a couple days. As of right now, my husband has been calling and sending numerous texts calling me the jerk and selfish. I'm currently ignoring it. When I dropped off Haley to my ex, we did talk about how Haley will be needing braces for a long time. She currently has her first set and will be getting a second set in the future. So we've decided to talk about putting that money towards Invisalign if she wants that instead in high school. I feel like this is a tough one, and a lot of the context that would drive a good answer to this is missing. On one hand, this sounds like a simple not the jerk. You prepared, he didn't. That's not your fault. But the way you explain it, it was 100% reasonable he did not prepare. It did not sound like either of you expected them to win and make it to Disney. So it's 100% reasonable not to be saving up for it. I'm going to go with no jerks here because I see both perspectives. Being in a family is to some extent about a give and take situation. If Jenna isn't able to go because there's no money, at the same time you and Haley still do a trip to Florida, you're going to end up spending more money on therapy than the trip cost in the first place. Is there some compromise? Can he save up some of the money and you loan him the rest, which he pays back over the next X time period? Then you and Haley can take a trip. That would be less time-bound than the competition. Now, if the husband is out wasting his money on partying and drinking and video games and buying crap, that's another situation. But there's nothing in your post that screams crappy husband that wastes money. Rather, a situation you weren't expecting occurred and no one is at fault for the lack of savings. Edit. My comment was made prior to all of the edits and responses from OP, based on the updates changing to not the jerk. Everyone sucks here. Family policies that keep not only the money but the kids separate so that he pays for his daughter and then you pay for your daughter are horrible in their very existence. You cannot more clearly say to a kid, I don't consider you family to me or my kid, than by refusing to treat them financially as your own. Everything else that happened in this situation came out of that. He didn't bother to save enough, but it wouldn't have mattered if you had ever really combined your family. If he routinely spent his money foolishly, You would have already had the discussion about taking responsibility for the family as a whole. You wouldn't have been able to put it off as not your problem because it wasn't your daughter. And he obviously just as much doesn't see your daughter as his own. If he did, he would have been saving money while it was expected that she was likely to win her competition, because that way he could help send her to the tournament she was expected to go to. And it would have been easy enough, if Jenna won and Haley didn't, to change the direction of the family money over to Jenna's trip. Both you and your husband have created and maintained a policy which sucks for both of your kids in ways that go far, far beyond the question of whether or not Jenna will be able to go to this tournament. You've ensured that neither of them will be able to bond with their step-parent and feel securely a part of the family as a whole. And you've set them up to constantly compete with each other by making it clear that whenever there's a shortage of something, each kid will be championed by their biological parent and opposed by the other. It doesn't matter how you put it, disparities will always come up. What happens if one of the exes is better off than the other, thus better set to provide for their kids? Are you supposed to use what your ex gives for their kids to a common pool where the other partner may not be able to put in as much? Wait for brows to start raising, because it's not fair that child support that's supposed to be used for one kid, as in this case, goes to compensate for the parent who's not able to provide. I guess this is always going to be an issue with blended families, and this is why these arrangements are made beforehand. They may sound crappy, but how would you solve that so that there's no injustice, imbalance, or disparity to anyone? It's not about avoiding disparity. It's about avoiding the not my kid, therefore not my problem approach on both sides. So long as they address issues related to either kid as a team, because they are both their kids, and they and their collective kids are one family, how you handle the details doesn't matter much. And that is very clearly not what is occurring here. The adults are not merely paying each for the expenses of their own kid, but thinking of them as my kid versus your kid, and that's a huge problem for the kids. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. He's not entitled to your money when he refuses to save for his own daughter. Can you move your car so my kids can play basketball? Backstory. Neighbor moves in across the street a year ago and immediately installs a basketball hoop directly behind my driveway. Not a huge deal by any means, but it made it very difficult for me to pull my truck out of my driveway. So I asked if she could put the base on the grass so the boys could play in the street. She agreed, and I thought this would be the end of it. Fast forward a few months, and this hoop is the local watering hole for all unsupervised kids in the neighborhood. Kids I've never even seen before are hanging out in my driveway. Bikes and trash clutter my lawn. This goes on for a few weeks before I ask the kids to start picking up after themselves. At first, they did, but that only lasted a few days. The trash starts piling up again, and I was beyond frustrated. I had spinal surgery during this time, so my range of motion is very limited, and I've grown tired of having to deal with this on the daily. I approach the kids and ask where they live, so I can go and talk to their parents. Imagine my surprise when half these kids don't live on my street, or even in my subdivision, but are walking a mile from another subdivision down the street to come and play basketball. 2 of the boys do live on my street, but 15 houses down from me. I decide to drive over and talk to their parents. Their parents are not home, but I'm shocked to find a basketball hoop in their front yard. I asked the boys why don't they play on their hoop, and they said it's because it wiggles a lot. I inspect the base and notice it's not even weighted down. I told them I would get them some sandbags, but they would have to ask permission from their parents first. A few hours later, they knock on my door and said that their mom said it was okay, so my fiance drives up the street and gives 5 of the sandbags I keep in the back of my truck bed for added weight in the winter. Problem solved, or so I thought. 1 week later, they're back at my house playing ball. I'm in my garage and my 2 vehicles are parked in my driveway. I hear one of the kids yell, so I looked up just as the basketball hits my classic car and busted out the taillight. I'm livid at this point. I tell them all to go home and play on their own hoop. They don't live here, and I'm tired of bending over backwards for these entitled kids. The cost to repair my taillight is $600, but since I didn't physically see anyone that did it, I really have no recourse or proof. It was most likely a bad rebound. Yesterday I came home to find the same group of friends playing basketball in front of my house again. That's the final straw for me. I motion for them to move, and I park directly beneath the hoop. I get out of my car, say nothing, and walk directly into the house. A few hours later, I'm outside getting my mail when I'm approached by my neighbor's guest. He said, "Why did you park here?" Me, "Because I live here." "Can you move your car so that the kids can play basketball?" "No, I can't." "Why can't you park in front of the tree over there?" "Because I don't want to. I want to park in front of my house." He then proceeds to argue with me about moving my car, and I'm getting frustrated. I ask who he is, thinking he's one of the kids' parents. Nope, he's a guest of my neighbor across the street, the one who installed the hoop in the first place. Once I found this out, I said if my neighbor has a problem, she can address it with me personally. Conclusion: left the car there overnight. I don't have to be at work until Monday. My landlord texted me and said if I know of anyone that's looking for a rental, the house across the street will be available November 1st. The hoop is finally leaving, and I cannot wait to be rid of it once and for all. As for the guest, I have no clue how to deal with that, but it seems like the problem will be solved on Tuesday one way or another. Ugh, I felt this. 20-ish years ago, we moved into a house that had a really nice permanent basketball hoop in the front driveway. The house had been vacant a few months, so it became the neighborhood hangout. It did not stop after we moved in, all day and long into the night, even after asking them to leave. So a few days later, my husband had it taken down. I could not believe we had multiple neighbors who had the audacity to come and chastise us for taking something off our own property, like we were a community park or something. We were young with no kids, and we told them to buzz off, and that we weren't babysitters for their entitled delinquents. If my work is that bad, then it would be better for everyone if I quit. My last job was okay, but not fantastic. We were always short-staffed, and as a result, we had to make up any time lost due to absence or illness. But the real trial was our boss, who was one of those seagull bosses, always wanting drastic changes to everything, no matter how unnecessary they were, or how much harder it would make our work. He also constantly threatened to fire people. I had had a mess up the previous year. I admit it was on me, and my supervisor, a very good one, helped me to sort it out and make sure it didn't happen again. But we had received some customer complaints, and I was paranoid about getting more. And oh boy, did the boss like to hold that over my head. Anyway, more than a year later, and I apply on a whim to a very well-regarded company in my town. To my surprise, I get the position. It's much better run and organized, so it's a great deal. But I do feel a bit bad for my old work since we're about to hit a very busy season. At least until my boss called and said he'd received a complaint about me and I needed to shape up or I'd be fired. I was really upset, but then, wait a minute, it's been the dead season just now. I haven't done anything to get complaints. I messaged my supervisor, and yep, no complaints since the last year. Boss was either making it up or pretending the complaints were from this year. So I decided this was the perfect opportunity. I messaged my boss and told him since there were so many complaints and I wasn't getting any better, it would be best for me to step down from my role, as I obviously could not do it. Immediate backpedal on his part. Suddenly, the complaints didn't mean anything. I could get a raise, sick leave, anything. Since it wouldn't be the first time he had promised us the moon and delivered a bowl of dirt, I didn't budge. He'd been telling me all year that I was on the verge of being fired and wasn't good enough for my role, so it was best that I go. He hung up and got the poor supervisor to call instead, and she twigged pretty quickly when I mentioned where I'd be working now, and all but said that if she got the chance, she'd jump ship for that too. Anyway, been at my new work for 2 years now, and it's great. No regrets. Snapped at the snapping. So I haven't been a server in over 15 years, but this has always been one of my favorite stories. I worked at a very small 10-table restaurant in Baltimore City. That part of the city was up and coming at the time, so we had mixed clientele of hipsters and seniors who had been coming here for years. Early on in the night, I get a foretop of 2 elderly couples who had come down for the crab cakes. From the very beginning, one of the men was very condescending, calling me sweet cheeks, etc. I took their order, and not 2 minutes later, he was snapping his fingers to get my attention. I finished what I was doing and went over. He asked me to bring him 5 different condiment sauces, a bowl, and a spoon so he could make his special sauce, which I did. He then proceeded to give me a lesson on how to make this sauce. I can't remember the exact contents, but I do remember mayo, Worcestershire, malt vinegar, and honey Dijon. Once he was done, he said, "It's a shame you have to live this life, but pretty people never get the brains, you know? Maybe this sauce can help you get something on the menu." At this point, I had enough. I walked away. 2 minutes later, the snapping ensued. I looked at him, looked away, and continued on with my other customers. My tip wasn't worth it. Then, after his ignored snapping attempts, he started clinking his glass with his fork, which I also ignored. When their food came out, I took it to their table. He was enraged. He asked me why I'd been ignoring him, and I told him that I don't respond to snapping and clinking, and that if he'd like to get my attention in the future, he could use his manners and say "excuse me" like a dignified human being. I then asked what I could help him with, and he said he just wanted me to try his sauce. I declined. When their meal was finished, he let me know not to expect a tip because I was so ungrateful of him, that he was just trying to help me get some prospects. That's when I let him know I was in my final year of graduate school and at the top of my class, that my prospects were just fine, and that his behavior was completely unacceptable. I told him he was rude, condescending, and ignorant, and that I hope his prospects in life improved with a bit of training in human manners. He stormed out and said he would be contacting the owner, who gave me her blessing in this, thankfully. 5 minutes later, his wife came in and discreetly handed me a 50. She thanked me for teaching him a lesson. I'm not sure of her reasoning on this part, but after that, they came in once a month and always requested my section. He always said, "excuse me," and they always left a $50 tip. When I graduated and left the city, they got me a card and a very generous gift. Good times. No pass, no entry. This happened quite a few years ago. I started a new job in IT support. After a couple weeks training and orientation, I was put on my first early shift. IT support were always the first in the building to make sure all the systems were good before the working day started, so I was given my own key to the front door to unlock the building. The entrance had a kind of airlock system. The outer door was unlocked, but then there was another automatic door that needed a swipe card to open it. Everything was fine for the first few days. Entered the building, got on with work. Then, this particular morning, as I unlocked the door, the head of HR walked up behind me. I recognized him as he had sat in on my job interview. I said, "Good morning," swiped my card and walked in. He followed me. As soon as we were in the building, he pulled me up and told me that I shouldn't have let him in without him swiping his pass. His argument was that he might have been fired the day before, so might have been trespassing. The swipe card system was not used to monitor people's work hours or anything like that. I apologized profusely, and he said he had let it go this time as I was new. Fast forward 2 weeks. I'm unlocking the door, and a complete stranger walks up behind me and tried to follow me in. I turn around and ask him to use his pass. He says that he forgot it. I say that I can't let you in. Then he drops the bombshell. "But I'm the CEO." I apologize and say, "Sorry, I only have your word for that, and I'm under strict instructions from the head of HR to not let anybody in without a pass on pain of disciplinary action." He got quite angry and said again he was the CEO. I apologized again, but left him in the airlock with a face like thunder and heard him shout something like, "I'll have your job for this," as I walked away. Later that day, I got a phone call from the head of HR. I thought he was going to go off on me, but instead, he said that I did the right thing and he was going to get the CEO to apologize to me. I did get a short email from the CEO to that effect later in the day. Entitled Mom is upset at me because I'm apparently cooler than her son. Hello. Since a lot of people liked the last thing I told on here, I figured I'd share some more. This one also takes place when I was around 16. This logic surrounding this one always was a mystery because quite frankly, I see myself as a regular dude. But, Cast. We've got me, Cross, the lovely nickname that I use. We've got Zoe, best friend from high school. Corey, another best friend from high school. Mark, entitled kid. And Karen, the entitled mom. And we've got Corey's mom. So this occurred around my summer break. I was just chilling one day on the couch when Corey, a good pal of mine from high school, comes over. What we did that day wasn't important, but the main thing is that before he left, he asked me if I could sleep over at his place for a few days, along with Zoe. My stepdad, just dad since, close as real father and son, said that that was perfectly fine, just as long as I don't cause any trouble. Just a parent watching out for his teenager. My mom was a little reluctant at first, as she didn't want her precious baby to be away from mommy, but my dad just told her that I'm not a kid and that he trusts Corey's parents. My parents are good friends with Corey, since I've known the guy since I was like 10. My mom relented in the end. My mother is a different can of worms that might be opened at a later time. The next morning, Corey's mom picked me up from my house along with Zoe. An unfamiliar face is Mark, who's Corey's cousin and the entitled kid of the story. We went to Corey's place and then did a bunch of regular teenager stuff. Now, I don't know if it was the oh-so-obvious signs poking out, but I got the distinct impression that Mark didn't like me. For example, we were at a convenience store and buying a bunch of snacks and whatnot. I offered to pay for everything. It was like $15 total. Mark scoffed and said that he could easily pay for all of that and that I didn't have to show off how rich I was, which earned him a shut up from Corey. He also tried showing off, like he tried to get us to call him Iron Man. You can cringe, because I have a cool nickname, and it's only fair that he has one too. The prime example is when we were coming home from the movies. It was nighttime, and we ran into a bit of traffic. It got a bit long, so Zoe ended up falling asleep on my shoulder, eventually. I didn't really care, since she was tired, and it's not really something I considered a romantic gesture. I, at one point, noticed that Mark, however, who was sitting at the front, was glaring at me. He turned away the minute I saw him, though. Fast forward to everyone preparing for bed. I went downstairs to get a glass of milk. Don't judge me, I like milk. As I was doing that, I felt someone tap me on the shoulder. Mark. Hey, we need to talk. Me. Oh, sure, what's up? Mark. Don't think I didn't notice what you're trying to do. Me. Huh? Mark. Don't play dumb. I know you're trying to show off in front of Zoe so that she doesn't date me. Me. If I was drinking my milk, I probably would have spat it out. Come again? You heard me. Stay away from her. I'm the only one she needs, and I'm not letting you have her. Me. Okay. 1, she's not an object, and 2, she's not yours. I didn't say she was. Me. That was heavily implied. Mark. Whatever. Just stay away from her if you know what's good for you. Me. Laughing, and then I patted him on the head. Sure, pal. Whatever you say. He huffed and then stomped upstairs. I just rolled my eyes and finished off my milk. When I went up to Corey's room, I was sleeping in a sleeping bag on the floor. He asked me this. Corey. Hey, Cross, I saw my cousin come up the stairs earlier. He seemed upset when he went in the guest room. Something happened? Me. Oh, nothing. Just regular teenage crushes, I guess. He looked at me confused, and I told him what happened downstairs. He rolled his eyes and said he'll talk to Mark about it. The next morning, we're having breakfast. Zoe's the last one to show up. Mark pulls up the chair next to him and offers for her to sit there. She does, and he gives me a smug look. I just ignored him and went about eating my breakfast. Now, you'd think the fact that I said nothing would give him some sense of satisfaction, because you'd think the silence would make him go something like, "Ha, I beat you." But instead, he stood up and slammed his hands on the table, crying about asking why he can't be cooler than me, and that I'm always trying to make him look lame. I did not see that coming. Corey's mom took Mark to the living room to cool down, while the rest of us were just bemused by this entire situation. But eventually, we just decided we didn't care and went on with our breakfast. Today was the day that Mark's mom was supposed to pick him up. He was going home earlier. Suffice it to say that when she arrived, she did not go quietly. When she arrived and found Mark crying, the following occurred. Entitled Mom. What did Corey do this time? According to Corey, he and his cousin never got along. Corey's mom. I don't know. He just started getting upset at Cross for no reason. I want to speak to this little brat right now. Corey's mom called us into the living room. Are you that Cross brat? Me. That's me. What did you do to my baby? Me. Nothing. Well, he wouldn't just cry for no reason. Me. That's exactly what he's doing. No, I want to know what you did right now. Corey. I think I know what this is about. Corey reiterated everything I told him yesterday to his mom, and she just rolled her eyes. Entitled Mom was fuming. Mark tried to interject, but Corey told him to be quiet and that this could have all been avoided had Mark not been jealous of someone he's known for less than a week. Corey's mom. Right, nothing happened. It's just your kid being a brat like normal. No,
This little crap made my baby cry. He deserves to be taught some respect.
Turns to Zoe.
And you? Why won't you date my son? Is he not good enough for you?
Zoe looked perplexed. I was upset. Corey looked like he was about to take someone down. However, I think we should appreciate the true hero of this story, Corey's mom. Okay, that's it. Take your brat and get out, now.
How could you? You'd side with this brat over your own nephew?
Corey's mom. Shut up. Entitled mom froze in place like a deer in headlights. Corey's mom. I am sick of you and your brat. I gave him another chance to stay here, hoping that you improved your miserable parenting and taught him that the world doesn't revolve around him. But it seems nothing has changed because you somehow think it's okay to shout and scream at a bunch of 16-year-olds just because your spoiled brat can't accept that a girl who has no obligation to date him is not interested, and that he thinks that a kid who's just trying to enjoy his summer break is trying to be cooler than him. Now, get out of here, and if you ever come within a 5-mile radius of here again, the police will see you out. Entitled mom huffed, grabbed her little brat, who was still crying, and ran out. After that whole thing, we just continued our breakfast. I haven't seen that guy ever since, but if he ever saw me again, I think he'd be pretty upset. Anyhow, I hope you got some giggles out of this one. Peace. My Karen teacher cut the tube for my insulin pump because we couldn't have headphones in class. This happened when I was in middle school. You know, back in the days of wired headphones, so around 2011 or something. I, 24, male, currently, have been a type 1 diabetic since I was about 4 years old, and I use a continuous glucose monitor and an insulin pump. I had an IEP, so all of my teachers were told about it, and that I would need my insulin pump in class, that it might make noise, and I might have to pull it out of my pocket and mess with it if I needed insulin, or I might need to drink a juice pouch, and I was able to do so at my discretion. We had one teacher who was a complete jerk for no reason. She was notorious for making kids cry during presentations. She even told one girl who wanted to be a doctor to find a cure for cancer because her little sister had it, that she would need to actually be smart to do that, while chuckling to herself. Let a kid dream, man. We were like 12 years old. As you can imagine, she was also at war with technology. And on a side note, those days I used my phone to check my glucose and give myself an insulin bolus. I can't imagine being a kid today and dealing with a teacher like that when the lines are blurred and your smartphone actually is a life-saving medical device. But anyway, if you're not familiar with insulin pumps, the kind I use has a little tube that connects the tube which has the insulin to my body, which needs the insulin. This teacher also liked to be weirdly obtuse about things. Instead of being like other teachers and simply saying something like, "No cell phones in class, put it on my desk," which would allow me to remind them it's an insulin pump, and they'd usually say something like, "That's right, my bad." She would instead try and talk abstractly about what she wanted to happen while walking around the room. So this particular day, she kept alluding to students listening to music in class that you should be careful what you do because she can see it, that us kids think we're so sneaky, but the adults know what we're up to. I obviously wasn't listening to music, so I figured she had seen someone with headphones in the room, and the next thing I know, she snuck up behind me with scissors. It took me a good moment to realize what exactly had happened because I was astonished. I was used to teachers thinking I had a cell phone or getting upset about my pump beeping during an exam, but no one ever had touched it before, much less cut my life-sustaining tube. I was actually sitting with my mouth agape, and she turned to me. Now that she was at the front of the class again, she said something along the lines of, "Mr. Wonderly, can't you share what tunes are more important than listening to class?" I'd at this point put together that she thought I was listening to music. She thought she cut my headphones wire. I replied, "Just the sound of my thoughts while I've still got any, since that was my insulin pump." She had to let me go to the locker to get my cell phone to call my mom to bring me a new infusion set. My parents insisted no cell phones until high school, but my mom was also scared with me being type 1 diabetic and too dyslexic to remember a cell number and wanted me to easily be able to call her, so she got me a $15 Walmart phone and put minutes on it, and now I feel old. Then I just waited in the front office for her. She worked from home and drove like a bat out of heck. She was so angry. I don't ever want to see her that angry again in my life. It took 10 years off of me, and I wasn't even in trouble. The teacher had apologized to me, and all the teachers got some more disability accommodation training or something. Kinda anticlimactic end, but a friend thought it was entertaining and that I should share it. Edit. I'm going to put some of my comments here so no one has to dig if you want more information. Yes, she knew I had a pump. I had an IEP, and my teachers were given the information they needed to know about my diabetes. Even still, a lot of non-diabetics just don't get it, or they forget. It would happen a lot, and teachers would ask for my phone if they saw me messing with it under the desk. Really, I was going through a thing and embarrassed about being diabetic, so I would often try and hide it, so I get how they thought I had a phone. But a simple reminder, it's a pump, was enough for every other teacher. Yes, she did get really close to me. I was facing the front of the room to look at the projector screen and to take notes. She snuck up behind me from the back of the room, where she was lecturing at us from, and reached her arm down towards me with the scissors. I didn't notice her doing that. Kids used to keep their iPod or whatever in their pocket and then run their headphones up their shirt. It sometimes left a little bit of the wire peeking out from their pocket to get to the shirt. That's where she cut the pump, was down at my waist. In terms of her apology, it wasn't too bad. We had a meeting with her, the principal, assistant principal, and a lady from the special education office, plus me and my parents. She said she was sorry for her actions and that she shouldn't have treated me that way, and she hopes I don't grow up to expect people to act like that towards me. She forgot I had a pump, but I didn't feel like she was making an excuse. She was saying she should have been more mindful and it was her fault and that I did nothing wrong. She also said I was brave and calm in the face of adversity. Stuff like that. And then she apologized to my mom and dad for frightening them and for any costs. She offered to pay it, but they declined. They wanted all the teachers to get more education about kids with diabetes, and the school had like a nurse diabetes educator or someone come in to talk to the teachers. No, my parents didn't sue her or the school. No, she wasn't fired. Yes, I still had to be in her class. This was a tiny school and did a lot of backwards things. They mishandled my learning disability as well, and one year, one of my teachers was surprised my dad has mild cerebral palsy and thought it must be so tough for me having to deal with that, and would talk to him like he was 5 during student-teacher conferences. He's an engineer. I asked my friend to move a picture of him and his wife because it made my wife uncomfortable. Me, male 32, and my wife, Dahlia, female 28, lost our apartment 2 months ago and moved in with mom temporarily. Issues began to rise between Dahlia and mom, and I had to ask my friend, Anthony, male 31, to let us move in with him until I could get enough money to rent out. His wife was away visiting family, and he agreed, but even there, some issues started to arise. FYI, Dahlia is very shy around Anthony. She grew up in a very conservative home, and so it's understandable, but sometimes it can be a bit much, I admit that. For example, she freaked out when she accidentally drank from his glass. She also once made a fuss when he passed by the guest room when she was lying down and the door was open. Thankfully, Anthony was super understanding, and we were able to talk some of these issues out. Last night, Dahlia was passing the hall and noticed a framed picture of Anthony and his wife kissing hanging on the wall. She told me about it and said it made her uncomfortable. She asked if I could speak to Anthony about it, but he didn't take it well. He gave me a look when I spoke to him and said this was bonkers because first of all, his wife put it there, and second of all, the picture holds sentimental meaning to him and his wife, and it was just a normal wedding kiss. We started arguing, and he said that it wasn't like it was hanging in the living room wall or a perfectly lit room. I asked him to be a little more considerate, because it's not like I asked him to remove it completely, just move it somewhere else where Dahlia won't reach or keep it off the wall until we leave. He said he was sorry, but still refused. I explained how Dahlia was feeling, but he said that again, he was sorry, but he would not move the picture. We argued some more, and he said that it's his house and that I was being pushy and kind of too comfortable to make such demands and be pushy. This morning, Dahlia refused to even come out of the room until the picture is moved. Anthony's refusing, which makes it worse. Now I feel like I'm getting stuck between a rock and a hard place. Yes, she might just be overreacting, but I feel like this isn't such a big ask for Anthony to decline and turn down. If it were me, I'd go the extra mile to make sure my guests are comfortable. Anthony has been a friend of mine for 10 years. I wouldn't have asked to move in with him if I didn't have such a strong bond with him. He himself constantly talks about all of the things and situations I helped him out with, and we are considered brothers. You're the jerk, and so is your wife. You're in their home. Your friend is doing you a huge favor, and that's what he gets in return? Your wife is being weird. You're enabling and coddling her. Find somewhere else to live if you're going to behave like that. Right? I mean, the audacity. Dahlia needs help. OP and his wife should just move out if they aren't going to appreciate their friend doing them a favor and putting a roof over their head. Anthony could have the picture painted on the entire living room wall. OP has no right to ask him to remove it. No wonder OP's mom had a problem with Dahlia. You're the jerk, OP. You're the jerk. Let me guess. The issues you had staying with your mother had everything to do with your wife being absolutely ridiculous? This isn't about being from a conservative home. So what's really going on here? Was she raised in a cult? Is she affiliated with some fringe religious groups? Seriously, you're staying in their home and throwing a fit over him kissing his wife in a photo? And your wife is throwing a fit and refusing to leave her room until they take down their perfectly normal wedding photo. And your comment about just doing it to keep guests happy is so baffling given the situation. Like, the photo isn't even the issue here, and it's not the only problem that's already happened. Your wife also freaked out after accidentally taking a sip of his water. Does this mean he's also not supposed to drink water in his own home to keep her comfortable? And then she got all upset because he had the audacity to walk past the door, which she had left open, while she just happened to be sitting on the bed. So he's also not allowed to walk through his home? What else is he not going to be allowed to do in his own house? Breathe? It would be bad enough if you were just guests that were visiting for a weekend, but this guy was extremely generous to allow you two to stay there while you figure out your financial burden. You're not even guests in the traditional sense. You're basically just roommates who aren't contributing financially. And this is how you treat him for taking you into his home? What's really going on with your wife? And why are you enabling this atrocious behavior and extreme entitlement? You letting her continue with her childish tantrum in someone else's home is making you as much of a jerk as your wife. Though I do wonder if there's an underlying mental illness behind your wife's behavior. You keep this up and you're going to need another place to stay. And I'm sure that your wife will inevitably get you kicked out of the next place too. And the place after that. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you take the picture down to make them happy or not? Please let us know. Absolutely not. And late at night when they're trying to sleep, I'd play some videos very loud that she definitely wouldn't want to hear. Bow chicka wow wow. Am I the jerk for financially contributing more to one of my kids' lives than to the other? We have two kids, Ava, 35 female, and Heather, 33 female. We have a great relationship with both kids. About 12 years ago, Ava got engaged to her now husband. We bought them a house in our neighborhood, and then the next year paid for their wedding. Heather has lived in a few different cities, taken different college programs, etc. She seems content to keep exploring where her happy is, and I think that's great. About 10 years ago, different plots of land came up for sale in our neighborhood. We asked Heather which one she wanted. She thanked us for the thought, but said that she didn't know where she wanted to be and that we shouldn't buy land for her. We ended up buying a plot of land near us. We told her, she again thanked us, but never made use of the land. Fast forward to now. Heather approached us, clearly nervous, and respectfully asked if we would be able to help her with a down payment for a house in the city where she lives. She was clear she understood if that was not possible. This has caused an argument between myself, 56 female, and my wife, 60 female. I would love to help Heather, but honestly, we're in very different financial circumstances now than we were before. We're hoping to retire soon and do not have a lot of excess money. My wife thinks that Heather does not ask for much and that we've clearly helped one kid significantly more than the other. Ava's wedding dress cost tens of thousands of dollars and the house was obviously hundreds of thousands. She thinks we should sacrifice whatever we can to help Heather. To be clear, we have financially helped Heather over the years, helped with decorations when she's moved, with furniture, etc. I know it's not the same, but I want to be clear we are involved in both kids' lives. I also know that Heather would be uncomfortable if she knew us contributing to her house was impacting our retirement. I think if we talked to Heather openly about the differences in our financial circumstances now and then, she would understand. My wife wants to sell the piece of land in our neighborhood to give Heather the money. I really don't want to do that, for a few reasons, including that I think Heather would regret that in the future because she's mentioned once or twice over the years that she will want to move back home when she's older. Prices for land here have gone up significantly. To be frank, nobody in our family could ever afford to buy here now or in the future. Am I the jerk for not being able to give Heather the down payment? I've been told I can edit. To provide more clarity, Mel and I are both women. That seemed to cause some confusion in the comments. I just want to say that Mel and I love both girls more than we can say. We didn't plan, and the fact that there are so many of you saying that Heather will think we value her less is our biggest fear here. Heather is a wonderful, independent, kind, and loving person. She deserved and deserves better from us, obviously. I'm not comfortable getting too specific, but over the years there have been some unexpected health issues arise with my parents and then Ava's kids that have depleted our funds more than we expected. But bottom line, that's something we should have taken into account when giving Ava so much. There have been many suggestions here that have been helpful, so I thank you for that, and for the reality check about selling the land and letting Heather make her own choices. Heather is a person who is incredibly sensitive and kind, most often to her own detriment, to a point where I think she knows we would prefer her to live near us and may not accept the sale of the land because of it. To be clear, I'm absolutely open to the sale of the land or transferring it to Heather now. It's just how to best approach it so that Heather doesn't feel guilty going forward. You've given us a lot to think about, and we're going to try to move forward as best we can to make sure Heather knows she's loved and valued. Some suggestions regarding our will were helpful in this regard. I'm not sure what else to say other than thank you for taking the time to comment. We're going to do our best to improve going forward. I think you're the jerk for paying tens of thousands for Ava's wedding and hundreds of thousands for Ava's house, but not putting aside or saving anything close to that amount for Heather. If you can't afford it now, then you can't afford it. But if at one point you were able to afford giving a gift of hundreds of thousands of dollars to one kid, then you should have made sure you had the same amount for your other kid. Also, they didn't think to save anything for Heather to build a house? So now OP just owns this plot of land with nothing on it, and no one can afford to build anything on it. What use is that to anyone? OP, you're the jerk. Sell the land. You're the jerk. You can sell the land. You're clearly pretty rich. Wise up and stop favoring your one daughter and holding back the other. You're the jerk. You ignored Heather telling you that she didn't want the plot of land and bought it anyway. Now your wife is telling you to sell it to use that money to help her in the way she wants to be helped. And you're refusing to on the mythical basis that she may one day change her mind. That doesn't make any sense. I get that your financial situation has changed, but you have the power to do one thing your kid has asked for, and you're saying no because of a plot of land she didn't want, still doesn't want, and may never want. The issue isn't just your finances, it's your stubborn refusal to see that the plot of land was you. You've lavished your other daughter. You owe Heather this much. You're the jerk. You're basically punishing Heather for not wanting to settle down at the same time and same location as her sister. If she had wanted to purchase 12 years ago, the same time as her sister, you would have divided the funds allocated to help your kids between your two daughters. But because she was not ready, you gave everything to Ava. As you stated in your post, you gave Ava hundreds of thousands while withholding no money for her sister. While you're not obligated to help your kids equally, helping one to the tune of hundreds of thousands and the other to zero must sting for Heather. You clearly favored Ava because she settled into your neighborhood. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for telling my nephew about family dynamics that his parents didn't want him to know? Nephew in question is James, 17, male. He'll be 18 in December. The other nephew and nieces in question are Cole, 28, male, and Melody and Brianny, who are both 30, female. My sister is the biological mother of Cole, Melody, and Brianny. Their father passed when the kids were 8 and 10. My sister married James' dad 15 years ago, and she never formally adopted him, but did raise him as her son. There was a lot of tension and conflict in the home, and Cole, Melody, and Brianny all moved out immediately upon graduating and turning 18. The relationship with my sister ended there. It also ended with James and his father. I stayed in contact with the three of them though, and have always known where they are and that they are not interested in reconciliation. Ever since my sister took on James as her own, they've allowed him to believe that she is his biological mother and that the other kids are his biological siblings, and it was only a few years ago I realized he believed they shared the same father as well. My sister and her husband have always encouraged James to believe that his siblings love and want to know him and that they will have a relationship one day. He has been craving that more in the last 2.5 years or so. He has mentioned it a number of times. Some family members and I tried to convince his parents to at least tell him the biological truth so he's not faced with it from people who will not care about cushioning his feelings or making sure he's okay. They refused. My sister said there's no biological truth. They are the parents and all 4 are their kids and it ends there. James has been talking to me a lot about finding his siblings and being excited to have them back in his life. He mentioned how maybe he could reconcile their parents and them too, and how he hoped to prove that they were never replaced by him and that he knows it must have been hard to have a baby come into the family so much later. He believed that was what the estrangement was about, what his parents told him. I decided he needed to know after my sister and her husband refused yet again to talk to him, so I was honest. My sister wasn't his biological mom, and his dad was not their biological dad. They were not blood siblings. I told him I loved him, and it didn't make him any less of my nephew, but I didn't want him blindsided by not getting the response he was expecting. He asked me if they would actually want a relationship with him. I told him no. He confronted his parents about the lies and the way they were setting him up. My sister called and told me I was a jerk and stepped out of my place by telling him what I did without her and her husband's consent. I can see my nephew, James, is struggling and trying to work out his head after the truth, and it makes my sister's words hit harder. Am I the jerk? That poor boy would spend a lifetime trying to heal something using the wrong medicine if you weren't honest with him. Now he can factor in this new truth in his contact with his siblings if he continues to reach out. It's important he knows the truth, not the jerk. Not the jerk. These kinds of lies always come out. Better sooner rather than later, in my opinion. And he's close enough to 18 that your sister's opinion isn't really all that important anymore. His heart would have been broken to pieces if he was really that motivated to find your other nephew and nieces. Not the jerk. The biggest reason for my vote is because his dad and stepmom let him think he was the reason the other kids left. That's horrible to put on a kid. I'm not saying the rest of the lies are okay, but the way this poor kid must have felt, thinking he was the reason his family couldn't be a family. It was going to hurt even worse if he spoke to his siblings and got hit with that from a place of pain from them. It wasn't your info to share, but he needed to know. Someone had to do right by this kid because his parents were failing him big time. They will obviously blame you, but their actions are probably going to cause them to lose contact with all 4 kids. One taco. So I've been lurking on this sub for a while, just laughing and sharing the pain, when I realized, hey, I've been serving and bartending for almost 10 years now, and I have so many crazy stories. Why don't I contribute? So I'm going to start out with one of the craziest interactions I've had with a customer. This was a couple of years ago. A guy came and sat at the bar, and I said, hey, how are you? What can I get for you today? He seems like he's in a pretty good mood, and he's like, I want a margarita and the crispy taco. I was like, okay, sounds great. I'll get that right in for you. I make the drink and I put in the food. Now mind you, I've worked at this place for about 3 years now. I know the menu in and out, and I usually know what people want and what people are talking about when they order things or try to describe something. And I will say that this was my mistake, but the way he reacted was literally so baffling. The way our menu was, only meals were listed, but you could order things a la carte if you wanted to. You just had to ask. So this guy really did ask for the crispy taco, exact wording, which implies one. But like I said, I've worked there a while, and when people say that or something similar, they're referring to the crispy taco meal, as it's called on the menu. So I ring it in as the meal. The food runner brings it out while I'm helping other guests, and I can see some sort of issue from the corner of my eye. 10 seconds later, when I'm done helping the other people, I go over to him, and I'm like, did something come out wrong? His mood has visibly changed, and he's like furious. He's like, I wanted 1 crispy taco, and there's 3 with beans and rice. At first, I don't really register the mistake, because I'm so shook by this guy just screaming at me, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. All of our taco meals come with 2 or 3 tacos. And he's like, I wanted 1 taco. 1! I come here all the time, and I always get 1 taco. At this point, I'm like, okay, wow, I get it. And like, I'm so sorry, sir. I just misunderstood what you wanted. I'll only charge you for 1 taco, and you can keep it all, and I can get a box for you if you want to take all of it home as well. And he's like, I only wanted 1. 1! I come here all the time and get 1. And at this point, I'm just like, what? And I'm like, I'm sorry, you will definitely only be charged for 1. And I walked around the corner to tell my coworkers what was happening and just to get away from this crazy man. And when I come back about 3 minutes later, he was holding his card like above his head with his arm all the way extended. And I go over and have to literally like reach this guy's card and give it back like, "Again, I'm so sorry about the mix-up. You were only charged for one taco." He had also eaten exactly one taco and then pushed the plate with everything else on it to the opposite end of the bar. When he left, the hosts came up to me and asked me what had happened because the guy who just left said he had the worst experience of his life. And I was like, I gave him 3 tacos instead of 1 and only charged him for 1. Anyway, I went back to grab the check he signed to see how much of nothing he left me, and he had written, "Forget you," in the tip line. I still have it somewhere. Never saw him again. Every customer that witnessed it left me a $20 or more tip. Would I be the jerk if we told our 20-year-old to move out, and why? I'm 26, female, and my boyfriend, Dave, is 39, male. We're in a difficult situation with my boyfriend's son, Alex, 20, male, from his first marriage. We also have my son, who's 2.5, and a newborn daughter who is now 3 weeks old. Alex moved in with us back in May. When Alex asked to move in with us, we agreed as long as there was some ground rules. Clean up after yourself, throw away your own trash, and keep his bathroom clean. We let him have his own bathroom as a way to compensate for him having to sleep on the couch. We have a 2-bed, 2-bath apartment, and my toddler has the other room. Save up for his own car and keep all dangerous items out of reach of the kid's hands. We didn't ask for rent or any household chores to be done. Well, in the 6 months he's been here, he's failed to do any of what we asked of him. His bathroom is always gross, and he doesn't throw his trash away or take care of his open snacks or dishes. He does work, but has no money saved up. He spends it all on certain things and junk food. We've had multiple talks with him about this with no change. The last couple of months, we've fallen into some financial hardship due to the rising costs of living and me being off work for maternity leave. We talked to Alex, saying that we will need his help, both financially and with the dog and the house after the baby is born. He agreed to help out. I also had a very traumatic C-section. He's not been helping like he agreed to. We applied for some emergency state relief to help until we get back on our feet, but we needed Alex's pay stubs or a note from his manager to get it because he's a member of the household. He had over 2 weeks to get either one. He didn't do it despite us reminding him many times and stressing how important it was and why. He kept saying he would get it, but was always at his friend's house, and when he did work, he still didn't get it. The deadline came and they canceled the application. Alex did us over so badly, and despite our talks with him, he does not seem to care at all. So now we're in a very tough position. Alex causes a lot of stress and grief when he's here, and even causes issues in mine and Dave's relationship. Alex also treats his dad like crap and makes him feel terrible for really stupid stuff. There's so much more I can't fit here too. Both of us agreed we don't want him living with us, but at the same time, this is Dave's kid, and he does love him despite how much he upsets Dave. He's only 20 years old, so it's not like he has his life together. Problem is, he doesn't seem to be trying either. I know he can be a good kid if he tries, and I really do want him to be successful in life, but he's making our lives horrible. I also don't want to leave him without a roof over his head, even though he told me he has somewhere to go if we lose the apartment. We're having a hard time with this situation, and I wanted an outside opinion. You're the jerk if you consider someone only 6 years younger than you our kid. His dad needs to be the only one talking to his son about all of this. You have no authority over his son. I scoffed after seeing the title, Our 20-Year-Old, and reading her age was 26. Lady, you were 6 years old when he was born. What? This isn't a minor. She pays bills in the house and actually does get a say in who lives in her home. The house isn't just her husband's, so yes, she does have the authority. He's not a minor entitled to care. Secondly, if the son objects to her calling him her son, fine, he has the right. You, however, have no right to tell OP what she calls her stepson. It doesn't matter if she's 20 years younger than him, she's still his stepmom. You're the jerk. I wouldn't listen to a stepmom 6 years older than me either. His father should be the one helping him out, not you trying to parent a man who is barely younger than you. You're barely older than your husband's kid. Of course he isn't going to listen to you. And Alex probably isn't listening to his dad because he's lost respect for him. What a mess. I suggest therapy for Alex and Dave to work out their issues before you just kick him out. I imagine Alex is feeling pretty upset with his dad, and that needs to be worked on first. You would be the jerk. You're the jerk. That's his son, not yours. You're not his stepmom. You're a 26-year-old girl his dad is with. Also, Where are all the people insulting you for the age gap? Oh, that's right. OP is a woman this time. If OP was a man with this kind of an age gap, y'all would be calling him a creep. I just found out my girlfriend has been living a double life, so I called her out on it. I, 23 male, have been dating my girlfriend, Jane, 21 female, for nearly a year. We go to separate colleges about 40 minutes away from one another, but we still see each other multiple times a week. I've noticed, though, that she always prefers to come to my apartment in a small town rather than me visiting her at her apartment. When we talk about family, she is always very reserved and just tells me she's not close with hers. As far as friends go, I've met a great deal of her high school and college friends that all seem average. Now, she had always presented herself as a broke college student and will actively say that fact whenever money comes up and laughs it off. However, I've noticed over the months that despite saying this, she refuses to eat fast food. She likes going on impromptu mini vacations, which by her standards are just staying within the country, but are by no means cheap, and she drives a car worth over $70,000. Last night, we met up with a few of her childhood friends to shoot pool. A few of them noticed that I drive a Tesla that I just bought for myself, brand new this year. It's my pride and joy, and I will admit that I've done quite well for myself over time and building up my own income. Here's where the red flags start. They all called her a different name. Rather than her name that I and all her friends I've met before call her by, they were calling her something else completely. All of these friends were also foreign, coming from Brazil, Spain, Ivory Coast, and etc. Eventually, while talking about my car, a Brazilian girl named Camilla asks Jane if she intended to ask her father to buy her one. Jane just shrugged it off awkwardly with a, maybe. Throughout the night, it became glaringly obvious that all of these childhood friends came from extremely wealthy families, so I asked Jane how she met them. She said that they went to school together overseas for a while and went to summer camps together. Jane also spoke to most of them in languages other than English, mostly French or Spanish, as that's what they all seem to know besides English. After we left back to my place, I asked her what the deal was, and she said that she does come from a well-off family, and the name that her friends called her was her actual name. She just went by a more common one when she came to our state because it was easier for people to pronounce. I felt deceived that she had been lying about her source of income for what seems like years, and that she actually had a lot more money than she had let on. I asked her if I could look at her Venmo, in which I see regular deposits from her father, ranging from $400 to $1,000 weekly as an allowance. I called her a trust fund baby and told her that she's a liar for pretending that she doesn't actually have money when she clearly does, and that she's just masquerading around lower classes and likes looking at how we all live. She got extremely upset with me and left, and is still refusing to speak to me. Am I the jerk? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his girlfriend? Please let us know. And you wonder why she kept it a secret from you? Erin demands I wear a different Halloween costume. I, 21 female, have been friends with Josh, 21 male, since we were kids. Our moms were friends growing up, and we were pretty much raised together. We've continued to stay best friends through all these years, and we both attend the same college. A year ago, Josh started seeing a girl, Lydia, 21 female, and it eventually developed into a relationship. They've been officially dating for 6 months now. I never met her when they were just talking because he didn't know where the relationship was going. When they did start dating, he introduced us ASAP because I'm his best friend. At first, I thought it was just shyness because I'm a close friend of his, so you obviously want to get along with your partner's friend. But it became very clear very quickly that she just had a problem with our friendship. This past Saturday, there was a Halloween party at our friend's place. Lydia was bringing a friend and told Josh that she and her friend would be doing a matching costume. So Josh asked me if we wanted to do a costume together. We decided to go as Steve and Robin from Stranger Things. I guess on Friday he told her this was happening, and suddenly her tune changed, and she wanted to do a couple's costume. He saw what she was doing, and he told her no. So she then texted me asking if I would change my costume. I said no, because I already spent my money and didn't know if I could even return it. Plus, I'd have to scramble for another costume. All of a sudden, I started getting spammed from random numbers, probably her friends, calling me all sorts of names. The whole time Saturday, she was just sulking, and one of her friends seemed to be consoling her the whole night. It just felt awkward. Josh is telling me we didn't do anything wrong, but I feel like he's biased because he's my friend. I want a third party's opinion. Am I the jerk? Edit. I don't plan on telling him about the texts. None of them were malicious or scary, just mean-spirited. I'm gonna give her the benefit of the doubt and hope that this was a random act that was totally out of her typical character. Edit. After reading some of your comments, I plan on telling Josh after class today when we meet up for lunch. Edit. I told Josh. Of course, as many of you predicted, he is unsurprisingly really upset with her. Not the jerk. It would have been one thing if she wanted to do a matching costume with Josh. In that case, sorry, but she as the girlfriend takes rank over you as the friend. But that wasn't the case here. Her sulking and having people spam your phone was ridiculous. No matter what anyone says, there's always a certain degree of awkwardness when you start dating someone who has a close friend of the opposite gender. But if she wants to talk about boundaries, she needs to do it in a far more mature way. OP. No, don't apologize for that. I don't expect to ever take priority over his partners. If she wanted to do a costume and he turned her down, but then asked me to do a costume with him, I'd call him out on it. I hope you let him know that you're getting those texts. Because she had to, at the very least, give your number to her friends, which means at best she's okay with it, and at worst she instigated it, neither of which is okay. I would want to know if my partner was having their friends text my friend insults. The one thing I do want to know is if Steve and Robin are a couple. I don't watch Stranger Things. If they are, I think that wasn't the best choice. If you're going to do a pair costume with someone in this situation, I would personally go with characters that are not coupley. That's not to say you're in the wrong in this situation, just that this wasn't, in my opinion, the best choice for the situation. Steve and Robin are besties and coworkers, but there is zero romantic feelings there. Love that you guys picked Steve and Robin, a beautifully platonic relationship. Your bestie literally waited for his girlfriend to make her decision about her costume, then he followed her lead. She did a duet set with her bestie, he did one with his. Just because she wants to sulk doesn't make it anyone's fault. She had opportunities, and she just didn't take them. Those are self-consequences. Your friend sounds like a good dude. Not the jerk, but she is for how she acted, and so is he for disregarding his girlfriend's feelings. I hope she can find a guy who respects her feelings and doesn't put his best friend's feelings over hers. If I was her, I'd dump him for putting your feelings over hers. Relationships with dudes who have a female best friend never work out long-term. You're always going to be a thorn in the side of any relationship he has until he grows up and cuts you off. No self-respecting woman would stay with a guy who has a female best friend. The only women who allow that are ones who have no self-confidence and figure they can't find a decent man who will put her first. My husband and I have a no friends of the opposite gender rule, and it's worked amazing for us for the last 11 years we've been married. He doesn't have any women texting him trying to hit on him, and I don't have any guys trying to get with me. Something sad about the younger generation is how open you all are to this kind of thing. It's like you rebel against traditionalism so much that what results is a cacophony of insanity where people with common sense are unable to find a decent partner. So glad I'm 35 years old right now and not 15. I don't know how I'd survive in this current climate. Edit. To everyone saying I'm not secure in my relationship, I'm very secure in it, in part because of our rules that we've mutually agreed to. To all you women who think it's perfectly acceptable to let your husbands have all the female friends he wants to and to go out to lunch with them, don't be surprised when you find out he's cheating on you, which he definitely will if he's not already. I guess you've never heard of a thing called temptation? You don't dangle a bottle in front of an alcoholic, you don't offer cigarettes to someone who's trying to quit smoking, and you don't let attractive women build close relationships with your husband. No matter how great of a guy you think he is, he will eventually cheat on you with one of them. It's not even his fault, to be honest. It's how men are biologically programmed. If your husband or boyfriend had the opportunity to hook up with a beautiful woman and you never find out about it, 99% of them would because it's just in their nature. Of course, they'd never admit it because you'd flip out on them. But trust me, no man would turn that opportunity down if they knew they'd get away with it. This is common sense that people used to have, but I guess this is a little too much for your little Reddit brains to comprehend.
Is what she's saying true, Reddit boy? Would you hook up with a beautiful woman behind my back if you knew you could get away with it?
Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP, or her best friend's girlfriend? Please let us know.
If you did matching costumes with another woman, you'd need a new head.
Am I the jerk for changing my adoptive son's name? Names are changed for anonymity, of course. My husband and I took in his cousin Sue's newborn due to her and her partner John's addiction issues. It's not a decision I regret. This beautiful boy is the light of my life, but it was a major life change for us. Especially me, as I was the one who gave up my job and my social life to be basically locked up, isolated during lockdown with a baby. It was supposed to be temporary while they went to rehab. They never went to rehab, nor complied with any of the safety plans set up by the authorities. From 2 months on, they've not seen the baby nor supported him in any way. John's family have not been involved either, as they also refused to abide by the safety plan or any of the authorities' recommendations. Now, 2 years later, my husband and I have full legal custody, and the authorities have closed the file. We've put forth a petition to change the baby's name. At birth, John and Sue named the boy Stephen to honor John's brother who passed of an overdose while partying with John and Sue, who was pregnant. My husband and I have never even referred to the baby by that name. We always called him Davy, his middle name, after Sue and my husband's grandfather. So instead of being Stephen David Jones, we're changing it to David Owen Smith. Owen is after my father, who absolutely adores him and accepted him as grandson from day one. So here's where I might have ventured into jerk mode. My husband thinks I went too far, but I feel they pushed me to the end. John's family found out and blew up my social media and messaging. Not husband's, just mine, telling me that I have no right to change the name or honor my father because I'm nothing more than a babysitter and I'm not the real mother. I was called a baby thief, among more vile accusations. So I snapped and responded back that my son's name will honor good men that he could proudly emulate, not like their junky relative who was a crap stain on the world, defrauding the government for benefits and stealing from anyone he could, and contributed nothing to life or society, and his only accomplishment is that he OD'd before he went to prison. Harsh, yes, but I still don't feel like I'm the jerk. Edit for clarity. I did not change the name on my own. My husband was very involved in the decision, as were our 2 daughters who helped name their baby brother. The name reflects our cohesion as a family. We are all Smiths. And my girls came up with the idea of using Pippi's name because it shows he wasn't just adopted by my husband and I, but an entire family. Not the jerk. He's your baby legally, physically, emotionally, all ways aside from DNA. There is no babysitting. He's never going back to them. Never. You are mom, period. Block them and ignore them. If you can, move away from the area. They'll eventually give up, but it'll take an annoying amount of time. Not the jerk. His biological parents only care because it takes away the last bit of control they assumed they had. If you're doing everything for him and he's legally in your custody, you have the right to change his name. If they don't like it, they can get better and fight in the court. Holy cow, that was pretty wretched. I think your words were a bit over the top, no matter how true they probably are. But you just ignited the flame. Sometimes saying nothing speaks louder. Next time, and there will be one, show some grace and restraint. It ticks them off even more anyway. Not the jerk. And if none of these family members are in the child's life, they have zero input. And block them on your social media. All of them. Good luck. Gentle, everyone sucks here. They're speaking from a place of pain and shame. I'm glad the baby has you and your husband, but there's no need to speak like that of people suffering from addiction. They're already as low as you can get, so there's no need to punch down like that. You know the truth of the situation, so do they. They just can't admit it to themselves. Keep being a godsend to the little man. Block the ones who are bent on rewriting the narrative and enjoy your family. An entitled dad was the scariest part of my Halloween. This year, I went all out decorating my yard and house for Halloween for the first time. It's my first house and I was super excited about trick-or-treating. I decided to go big. I dressed up, handed out goodie bags, and played spooky music. I just wanted to have fun on my favorite night of the year and help all the kids have fun too. I made goodie bags that included some stickers, a small toy, 3 fun-size M&Ms, and a full-sized candy bar. I drew something cute on each goodie bag and had a lot of fun with the whole thing. About an hour into trick-or-treating, a family pulls up on a trailer with an American flag being pulled by a 4-wheeler. Several kids came barreling out and ran up to my door. The first few kids were clearly too old to be trick-or-treating, but I gave them a bag anyway, because they had a couple of the younger kids with them, who were probably 7 to 9, and they all quickly ran off. Then, trailing so far behind that the other kids were already back at the four-wheeler, was the little one, probably 5 or maybe 6 years old, cute as can be. I asked if she was having fun, and told her how much I loved her costume and gave her a bag. She started walking back down the driveway when, I'm assuming, the dad yelled loudly, "I hear this one has full-sized bars. Let me see," and snatched the bag right out of the little girl's hands. He started to walk away and yelled, "What? No way. We got scammed," and turned around angrily and started up the driveway toward the house. I instantly felt sick. Blood rushed to my ears. My heart was pounding, and I steadied myself for an angry confrontation. I was legitimately scared for a second. I decided right then I was going to stand my ground, even though this man was big and scary. Well, he apparently didn't see the full-size bar at the bottom of the bag, because he yelled, "Oh, wait, there it is. Lucky for them," and turned around, hopped on the four-wheeler, and left. Now, I'm not a shrieking violet, but I almost cried. I wasn't even sure why. Maybe the adrenaline that filled me when I saw him angrily walking back towards my house. Maybe because he totally ruined that experience for his daughter. Or relief that he wasn't coming after me. Maybe all those things. I was shaking so much that I had to go inside and collect myself before going back out. I still can't get it out of my mind. It really did put a damper on the rest of the night, and I've decided that was the one and only time I'll be doing this. This world is so scary, and people are so entitled that doing something kind still gets you threats. I hope that girl is okay. Oh, I do want to add the one thing that made me feel a little better. Towards the end of the night, I hear a small voice exclaim from somewhere down the street, "Stickers!" That's when I remembered why I did it. ETA, thank you for all the kind words. I loved reading about your stories, and I did learn something after it all. Although I felt like a 17 to 18-year-old was too old to trick-or-treat, I see now that it is important for everyone, and I should change the way I look at it. As pointed out, at least they weren't out getting drunk somewhere. So thanks for setting me straight. Am I the jerk for using the single-car garage for my own car? My boyfriend recently complained to me about the fact that I use my single-car garage for my car year-round. We live in a city with harsh winters and somewhat frequent vehicle thefts, so use of the garage is certainly a privilege. Am I in the wrong for not wanting to share this garage use at all? Some facts. I bought the house we live in and pay for everything to do with the ownership aspect of it. We even have a legal agreement stating that it's my property alone. He pays for half of the monthly utility and grocery bills, and not a penny into anything else for our home. No mortgage payments, property taxes, household supplies, renovations, maintenance costs, etc. I make significantly more money than him, but I'm far from being wealthy. Our vehicles are very close in value. His vehicle was given to him outright by a family member, used. I saved up and bought my vehicle, used. I was really shocked when this came up in conversation because I figured that it's very fair that I use the garage given that I bought both it and the car inside of it when he basically lives here almost for free and has a car of similar value that cost him nothing to acquire. I don't want to be one-sided on this, so alternate views are appreciated. My initial response to him was an outright no when the suggestion came up to share use of the garage. Edit. I want to say a sincere thank you for all of your comments, whether they're shooting me down or supporting my stance. I am a bit overwhelmed by the responses, and I don't think I'll be replying to each one of them if there isn't anything to clarify, but I want to express my genuine appreciation. Some of what you are taking the time to share is really helping me organize my thoughts as I prepare to have a conversation about this with my partner. Edit 2. I've read the word garage now so many times that I'm starting to read it as garbage, and that's kind of entertaining in and of itself. Not the jerk, but you pay for everything for the house and you split shared expenses? What exactly does your boyfriend bring to the table except demands? Does he do more than his share of the household chores? Does he do maintenance on your car like oil changes and keeping the tires full? Does he cook most nights? Those things matter, because if he is a really good boyfriend, maybe you would want to let him park in the garage sometimes. However, if he contributes half or less in terms of cooking, cleaning, laundry, etc., then he seems a bit entitled. Not the jerk. I'm not even understanding what he's proposing here. Because I suspect the second you start letting him park in the garage, you will never be able to park in there again. I own the place my partner and I live in. They pay half of everything except renovations, with the understanding that when we graduate our PhD programs and inevitably move, what I make from the sale of this place will supply the down payment on a home we purchased together. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know. Sometimes we read these stories, and I think it's a shame that they're even wondering if they're a jerk or not. Am I the jerk for punishing my daughter for making us all worried? My wife and I have a son who's 17 together. 16 years ago, I was drunk, and I got with another woman, which resulted in another baby, who's now 16, female. My wife forgave me, but she made it clear that she doesn't want to be anywhere near my daughter. I have my daughter every other weekend, and my wife would just go to her parents' home every time she's with me. A few days ago, we were going out with my extended family, and my daughter was also invited, but her mom wasn't invited. She asked me if I could give her a ride, and I said yes, but when my wife found out, she said that while she doesn't have a problem with my daughter being there, she doesn't want her to come visit with us. I tried to change her mind, but I couldn't, so I asked both my brothers if either of them would bring my daughter with them. They both said yes, so I called my daughter and told her I have a problem, and asked her to come with one of her uncles, and she said okay. Well, we went there, and both my brothers came, and my daughter wasn't with either of them. They both said that my daughter told them she's going with the other one. I called her and her mom and all of her friends, but no one knew where she was. Everyone just left to search for her, and after a few hours, my son found her. I was so mad at her, I yelled at her and told her how she made us all worried. I took away her car that I bought for her as a punishment. Her mom has been calling me, saying I'm a jerk and demanding I give her car back. Edit, just to clarify, she didn't drive there because it had a dangerous road and she's not a good driver, so I told her she's not allowed to drive there. Edit. Okay, everyone, I get it. I'm the jerk. I gave her the car back. It seems like everyone thought I was taking the car forever. I wasn't. It was just supposed to be for a month. I tried to talk to her, but she doesn't want to talk. However, she talked to my son, and he told me she was very upset and didn't come because she thought I didn't want her there. And the reason she didn't tell us where she was going was, as I guessed, to ruin my day and make me angry. I called her and apologized and told her that we are going out again and promised that she'll come with me this next time, and she seemed happy about it. I also had a conversation with my wife and told her that as much as I wanted her to come with us, if she can't be in the same car as my daughter, then she needs to find someone else to give her a ride. She left to her parents' home, and I'm not sure what she's gonna do. You're the jerk. I'm sorry. I get that your wife is upset with your cheating, but she's putting all her anger and hurt feelings onto your daughter. You have 2 kids, and if your wife can't see that, then you both should end this relationship. Your daughter deserves to have her dad in her life as much as your son does. If your son is allowed to come with you to an event, then so should your daughter. And if you want to support your wife and can't stick up for your kid, then she is better off without you. You're the jerk for making your daughter feel unwelcomed and unwanted, and then punishing her for acting out instead of sympathizing with her. She is not responsible for your infidelity. It's not fair that you let your wife punish her for your mistake. Everyone sucks here. You're the jerk for letting your wife mistreat your daughter like this. What did your daughter ever do to deserve being ostracized? It's weird that your wife can forgive you for your infidelity while taking her anger and frustration out on her when she had nothing to do with the poor choices you made. I can't blame your 16-year-old daughter for not wanting to come to an event where she's already been made to feel unwelcome, but I do think that the way she went about turning down the invitation was wrong. She should have confronted you outright instead of passive-aggressively telling each of her potential rides that she already had the transportation covered. All in all, I'm far more willing to forgive a 16-year-old's short-term thoughtlessness over the chronic mistreatment inflicted by a spineless grown man and his shrew of a wife. As for taking the car, let me tell you how this will play out long-term. She will eventually come to realize that she doesn't need a darn thing from you, and that you can keep your stupid gifts if you're just going to hold them hostage to her placid compliance. 10 years from now, you're going to be wondering why she never calls or visits. You will likely have forgotten all about this situation by then, but I guarantee that she will still remember. Am I the jerk for not wanting to split 50-50? I, female 26, have been seeing my boyfriend, male 28, for a few years now. He owns the apartment he lives in while I'm finishing uni this semester and will start making a decent salary from January. He has wanted me to move in for a while now, which I would be excited to do, but we have some differences in opinions that we have a hard time settling on. He wants to split costs, his monthly mortgage down payments, plus bills and groceries, etc., 50-50, as we will be making around the same amount. I don't agree with this, as it's his apartment, and by default, I will be paying down his mortgage, and will be left if nothing if we break up, while he will have his house and interest from its rise in value. I propose that I can pay 50-50 of all expenses as well as half of the interest rate, but not contribute to the mortgage payment of his loan. This way, I can put the rest of my money into savings, so when my savings are big enough, we can go in on an apartment together that will be in interest for the both of us. Or I can buy a share into his existing apartment. He thinks it's unreasonable that we wouldn't pay the same monthly expenses when we both make the same, and that I'm focusing too much on what is mine and what is his. He's made small digs, hinting that I'm trying to leech off his investments by getting a cheaper place to live, which I don't think is the case. I find that splitting everything 50-50 disproportionately advantages him and basically results in me paying down a loan that I have no interest in. Am I the jerk? Edit. First of all, thank you so much for the responses. It's really interesting to see how people see things so differently. Here are a few clarifications on some things that are brought up in the comments. I will not be having free rent. The interest rate is quite significant, as well as fees related to the apartment complex, plus insurance, etc. It's only the actual mortgage portion, aka the equity part, that's a matter of dispute. His expenses will be significantly lower if I move in with him rather than him living by himself as he is currently. I am not currently homeless, and I'm living in a flat with 3 friends where I don't mind to continue living. For everyone saying I would be paying down a landlord's mortgage regardless, that is true, but our relationship is not a landlord-tenant relationship where the goal is for the landlord to profit off of its tenants. And this might be me that is being absolutely too stubborn, but yes, I would rather want to pay the mortgage of a landlord than have my boyfriend actively profiting off of me, because that would be a formal agreement with more stability, and it would be within its nature to be profitable for one party. It doesn't sit right with me that our living situation would be an agreement that my boyfriend would profit off of. Another clarification. Half of the expenses are still more than what I'm paying in my current living situation. Additional clarification. He's not willing to enter an agreement where my rent goes into equity so I can gradually buy my way into the house. There still seems to be a lot of confusion about the free rent part, and I don't think people realize how much of your monthly expenses are tied to interest and other costs, such as insurance and fees connected to the complex. What I'm proposing is about 40-60. It's only the principal payment of the loan which is of dispute, which is the direct payment of his loan that is increasing his equity. Small edit. Remove the part about what it would cost to live alone, as it seemed to be confusing people. Living with my current roommates in our flat for a lower rent is the alternative option. Sorry about any confusion. Not the jerk. You both have a point, but the appropriate rent for you to pay is the lower of these two. 1. Half of everything, like he says, or 2. Market rate if you rented a room as a roommate. He shouldn't be subsidizing your housing expense overall, but you shouldn't be paying more than you'd pay if he was merely a landlord. I'm curious if market rate, as if they were roommates, would allow her the same renter control she would have with a regular landlord. Would she get full control of a room? No. Then paying as if you're renting a room by yourself doesn't make sense. Is he going to demand more control of shared spaces because it's his? Would she have any renter protections? If she wants a ducky-themed bathroom, can she decorate it that way? Or is he going to override her because it's shared, but he owns it? I just don't understand paying market rate for less autonomy or control of a space. In my opinion, I think I would rather rent from a stranger with full renter protections than rent from a significant other who might throw his weight around because he owns the place, you know? OP, get your own place. It's not worth it. If your partner is going to throw around their weight because they own the place, you should break up. Your post assumes that the property-owning partner is a jerk. Sure, if your partner is a jerk, forget it. But that's not what that should look like. I'm in this situation, but reversed. I own my house, and my partner rents from me. I charge him the low end of market rate for a room in my house. There's one room to him that he has full control of. Told him he could repaint it if he likes, hang whatever he wants, etc. One room I have full control of, and everything else is mutual decision-making. When he moved in, I took down some of my decorations to make room for his, and packed some of my stuff into the garage to make room for his. When I had to replace the washer and dryer because it broke, I let him participate in deciding which to replace it with, and I paid for all of it, though he offered to pay half, which a landlord wouldn't do, but a partner would. If two people are living together romantically in a space, they should treat it as a shared space where each person has 50-50 input. That dynamic can be completely severed from who is paying for what. My partner actually offered to pay half my monthly mortgage payments, but I felt that wasn't fair because he wasn't going to get equity in the house, which is why I suggested the lower end market price for a room instead. If we get married, he will get equity in the end, and if we don't, he will have saved money. He will pay $600 a month less living with me than he did living alone because living alone is expensive. Not the jerk. There is middle ground to be had here, but you shouldn't be paying half when he gets 100% of the equity. Don't move in with him then. Keep paying rent to your landlord. Problem solved. Not the jerk. I've lived in my now husband's place and paid rent, and I feel exactly like you do based on how you said it. The difference is we had a formal agreement and an extra bedroom, so if we broke up, I was given 90 days and other legal protections. His dad is a lawyer, and we had it written in how if we got married, I would then have equity in the home equal to the rent I had paid. Rent and utilities were separate. And his dad added a bunch of legal protections for me that I hadn't thought about. Basically, if my then boyfriend decided to do something like cheat or whatever, he couldn't evict me without however many days' notice. I love my father-in-law. There is a way to do what your boyfriend wants and protect yourself. Get a legal tenancy agreement written up and separate it from your relationship if you can. My husband was on board from the beginning, so it didn't feel weird. He wanted me protected too, but I lived there, so I needed to contribute to living there, and we found a way to protect us both thanks to father-in-law. We sold that place and bought our dream home after we got married, and equity didn't matter because it worked out. But if you're paying rent, you need the protections of a renter. He can't have his cake and eat it too, and he should be amenable to a contract that protects you both if that's what this is about. Consider this a blessing. Insist on a rental agreement that protects both of you and see how it plays out. If he isn't on board, well, you learned something valuable. Well, who do you agree with? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know.
I'm sure it's just me, but I feel like people really overcomplicate things these days.
Karen lied to my face about being sick, so I fired her. My husband and I hired a nanny back in August to care for our kids while we're working. The kids are on a weird schedule at school where they don't attend every day or all day, so we hired a full-time nanny, Marie. We liked Marie, despite some issues with her following guidelines we had discussed when we had hired her. She let the kids have way too much screen time. She spent more time on her phone than with the kids. She would make messes and let the kids make messes, and she wouldn't clean up after them. She had friends over without letting us know. She let the kids pig out on junk food instead of feeding them real food. All of this had been discussed when we hired her, and we saw it all when we reviewed our security cam footage. So we set her down about 3 different times and gave her official warnings each time. She'd improve for a while each time, but then go back to the way she'd been before. 3 days, Marie called out, said she was really sick. So I told her to get better and I'd call out from work to be home with the kids. I'm in the middle of a big project at work, and people not coming hurt everyone. But I'm a mom first, and I don't expect Marie to take care of the kids if she feels sick, so I called out. The next day it was really hot out, and the local water park is running an off-season special with cheap tickets, so I took the kids, and after a while we ran into Marie with a group of her friends. I couldn't really say anything, except I hoped she was feeling better. Marie started to apologize and told me that her best friend had gotten tickets to the park and she wanted to go, and she didn't think I'd have given her the day off. I told her I would have if only she had told me the truth. I explained to her that she had lied to me and made me call out at a time that was really inconvenient, and if she had just told me the truth, then I'd have understood, and I would have been happy to give her the day off and call out myself. It's the fact that she lied to me is what upset me. I added the lie to her other warnings and decided she wasn't worth keeping employed. My husband and I pay well above market rate, and we provide everything. All she needed to do was take care of the kids and follow the few rules we set. I took her aside and really quietly, and as kindly as possible, explained this to her and told her that I'd pay for her the whole week, but she was fired. Marie started crying, and her friends figured out what was happening. They called me a jerk, a Karen, a monster. My kids got upset, so I took them and left. Marie has been blowing up my phone with apologies and begging for another chance. Some of my friends say I should have given her another chance and that firing her was an overreaction. Was I the jerk? Edit. Marie is not some teenager. She's a 26-year-old woman with a degree in early childhood education and some other certifications/licenses related to the field. She's had one previous long-term nannying job, classroom experience, and she has several younger siblings and relatives and an extensive babysitting career. All of this I verified, along with a good review from her former position. I had no reason to suspect she was less than she presented. My daughter flipped out on me for eating her shrimp. I, male 51, live with my wife who's 49 and our 3 kids, our daughter who's 24, and our 2 sons who are 21 and 14. I pay the mortgage, I pay the bills, I pay for groceries. My wife works and her money goes for our vacations and retirement. We're happy with this arrangement. She makes about $85,000 a year and I make more. My daughter has a job that she got after college. My middle kid works part-time while he's in school to pay for extras. All 3 of my kids will graduate their undergrad with no debt. I work weird hours and shifts. I'm writing this at 3:30 in the morning because I just got home. There was a note waiting for me on the fridge going off on me for eating a box of firecracker shrimp I found in the freezer and I made myself for supper yesterday. Apparently, it was something my daughter had bought for herself. There wasn't any note on it in the freezer or anything. This isn't the first time that this has happened either, but I think it will be the last time. I'm thinking of talking to my wife and asking her to tell my daughter that anything in the freezer or fridge that isn't labeled is fair game, or that she has to start paying for all of my groceries that she's consumed. Because she does not buy the basics. She eats all the groceries that my wife buys. I don't really have a problem with her living here rent-free and eating my food while she saves money. I have a problem with her calling me a jerk for eating food I found in my freezer in my house. I should probably add that in the past, I have found out that more than once, food she got actually just meant food that she added to the grocery list that I paid for and her mom shopped for. Am I the jerk? Edit. To answer a bunch of common questions. Just spoke to my wife and my daughter. The shrimp was purchased by our wife using our budget. It was frozen shrimp, not takeout. My daughter has now agreed that if there is food that she purchases with her own money, that she will label it and I will not eat it. And I will make sure that the boys know as well. As for rent, I still want her to save her money. Kids have it hard enough these days. You're the jerk. Because as the parent, you should just talk to your daughter instead of continuing this weird, passive-aggressive, indirect communication by having your wife do it. Your daughter is probably going to have roommates when she moves out. There's a good opportunity to teach her about living with other adults. Everyone sucks here. It was an honest mistake. However, your attitude about your mistake was really harsh. You could tell her to put a basket in the fridge or freezer for her stuff. Yeah, she should label it, but I know I wouldn't think of labeling food where I live. It's weird that you couldn't resolve this in text. It also seems like you're looking for a reason to charge her rent. If you're going to do it, you should have told her when she started working. Doing it as punishment is weird. Info. Why are you so unaware of what groceries are fair game? My significant other and I both work and we both plan the weekly meal plan and grocery list. If you leave all the planning, shopping, and meal prep to your wife, this is a you problem. It seems pretty straightforward. If you didn't ask someone to get you firecracker shrimp, it's probably not your firecracker shrimp, unless you're still yearning for the 50s. You're the jerk. As usual, what the heck are these comments? You know you didn't buy that shrimp yourself. You admit she bought it. So you want permission to eat food you didn't pay for? But the person you should have asked about it was the person it belonged to, not Reddit. And since she was sleeping, you had the whole rest of the fridge and pantry of your groceries to eat. If you're bitter that you pay for groceries and want your kids to contribute to the bills, then be an adult and say so. But that doesn't give you the right to eat prepared food somebody else bought, labeled or not. Would you eat something out of the communal work fridge just because it wasn't labeled, knowing you didn't bring it? Are you that guy? You're the jerk. You are one family. Who gives a hoot that you pay for the groceries and your wife the vacation and retirement? If you claim the groceries now, she has the right to claim the retirement money. What? That doesn't even make sense. You're the jerk. So you think because you're the man of the house, you can just eat whatever you want to in the fridge, even if it doesn't belong to you? That's BS. You need to get your daughter's permission before you eat anything that belongs to her. You honestly sound like a horrible father, so don't be surprised when she goes no contact with you. Your kids deserve so much better than an inconsiderate jerk like you. Honestly, if I was her, I'd post a video about this on TikTok to call you out and make sure your job finds out about it. People like you really need to be held accountable. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his daughter? Please let us know. Reading comments on Reddit is the #1 way to lose faith in all of humanity. I took our son trick-or-treating without my wife. I'm 29, male, and my wife is 30, and we have a 4-year-old son. As Halloween approached this year, my son let me know that he wanted to dress up as characters from his favorite show at the moment. These aren't costumes that are readily available to buy, so I was going to have to do some crafting magic and make them myself. I'm a stay-at-home father, and my wife is something of a workaholic. She could cut down on her hours if she wished, but she's always been a very work-driven and focused person. She's not very maternal. Because of this, my son has never been very attached to her. They have time together at dinner, but even during times when my wife is off work, like during bath time and bedtime, it's always just me. This isn't me complaining. I signed on for the stay-at-home dad life, and I enjoy every minute of it. I just wish, for his sake, that she would be more involved. About a month before Halloween, my son asked if my best friend, who's 35, male, could dress up with us. He had already assigned himself and me as a specific character, and I had started working on the costumes, so I figured it wouldn't be a big deal to add one more. He adores my best friend. They have such a sweet bond, and have since my son was born. I asked best friend if he wanted to join us for trick-or-treating, and he immediately agreed. During dinner the night following this, I asked him what character he wanted his mom to be. My son said he only wanted to go trick-or-treating with daddy and best friend. Over the course of the next month, I would casually bring it up again to my son, and he continually gave the same answer. My wife was clearly hurt, but would always brush it off. Fast forward to Halloween night. I had spent weeks working on these little costumes for all of us. As we were getting ready, my wife and I got into a big argument over the fact that she didn't have a costume. I pointed out that if she had wanted me to make her one, she could have requested I do so, or she could have gotten one for herself. She said it was ridiculous that the three of us were doing a matching theme and leaving her out of it, and that she wasn't even going. In the end, best friend and I took him trick-or-treating alone, and my wife still isn't speaking to me because she can't believe I actually went without her. Am I the jerk? I have to go with you're the jerk. I'm halfway waiting for the update where you turn the guest room into an art studio for the best friend without discussing it with your wife. Info: why did you let your 4-year-old exclude mom and kind of just roll with it, especially since you say that she was clearly hurt by it and also that you wish they had a stronger bond? Not making a judgment yet, just looking for more clarification on your thought process when he said he didn't want her coming. Not downplaying that she needs to make an effort because she obviously does. It would be great if wife was more involved with your son. It would have been nice if she had expressed a definite interest in participating so you would have had a costume ready for her. When you were planning it, perhaps it would have been a good parenting moment to remind your son that being left out of the fun can hurt people's feelings, and there was no reason to exclude mom. You mentioned it would be nice if she was more involved with your son. Maybe she needs a little help feeling wanted since you and your son have already figured out your style of interaction, and hers might be a little different, but she doesn't know what it is yet. Maybe doing things together with her, but being careful to make sure she doesn't feel like a third wheel would be a start if part of the problem is her not knowing how to connect with him. I just worry that there is a disconnect because she's gone for too many hours, and then the lack of connection makes her work more to cover and hide being hurt, and what might otherwise have been fixed remains broken forever. Of course, I could be totally misreading the situation. You're the jerk. You do not let a 4-year-old decide who is included in family activities. You're the adult in charge, and you should have made sure to include your wife, with a costume that matched. Your entire post comes across as judgmental and whiny. You seem to want to prove that you're the better parent. What's that about? If you're unhappy, talk to your wife. Don't use your son to punish her. Do better by your wife and your son. Imagine if OP was the mom and the dad was the workaholic who wasn't included in the trick-or-treating. Everyone would be saying that dad should be helping with childcare when he gets home from work, and that if he wanted to go trick-or-treating, he should have asked beforehand. But as usual, because OP is a man, you all are tearing him to shreds and making excuses for the absent mom. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. Communication is very important from all sides. We always have to communicate about things and not just try to blow it off. Am I the jerk for throwing my niece out of my house? I, 48 female, have a beautiful daughter, Amelia, who's 17. I'm a single mother because Amelia's father left before she was born, and she is my whole entire world. Amelia is also a teen mother to my beautiful grandson, Owen, who's 1. I'm obviously not proud of her for being a teen mother, but I am extremely proud of her for how she's handling everything. She's an amazing mother, and she's still doing very well in school. She's dating Owen's father, Raymond, who's also 17. He's a lovely kid too. They all live with me in my home, and I provide for them financially with some support from Raymond's family. I'm a lawyer, and I'm lucky enough to be able to work from home most of the time, so I care for my grandson during the day while Raymond and Amelia are at school. When I have to go into work, Raymond's family looks after Owen. Recently, my sister called and asked me if I could allow her daughter, Stephanie, who's 19, to move in with me. It's difficult to find a place to live in our city, so I agreed to let her move in for free. I'm very big on family taking care of each other, so I didn't want to charge my sister's daughter rent. I immediately noticed that Stephanie was being weird about Amelia being a teen mother. She'd make tasteless jokes, and I immediately took her aside and I told her that I would not tolerate any sort of teasing. I've hired a tutor for both Amelia and Raymond just for extra support, and when Stephanie found out, she rolled her eyes and said they wouldn't need one if they had just been responsible. She also said that I was rewarding bad behavior, but I told her that I like to take care of my family, just as how I allowed her to move in for free. Then I realized that Stephanie was taking some of Amelia's clothing without permission. When she first moved in, I told her that in my home, we ask for permission before taking other people's belongings, so I was pretty annoyed at it. Amelia asked Stephanie to return a shirt that she had taken, and she refused and said that Amelia didn't need it back because she didn't fit into it. Amelia did gain weight as a result of pregnancy, and it's made her very insecure. It was a shirt she wore pre-baby, and she keeps it so that she can use it to motivate herself to lose weight. I told Stephanie to return it immediately and apologize, but she refused. We got into a massive argument that resulted in me packing her bags and calling her mother to come and get her. Everyone in my family is bombarding me with phone calls, calling me a jerk for kicking her out. I fear I may have been too extreme, and I could have tried to sort it out before it got bad. Am I the jerk? So, your freeloading niece comes into your rent-free home, bullies your daughter, steals her things, and your family thinks that you're the bad guy for packing her bags? They're having a laugh. Tell them to feel free to take her in if they feel that strongly. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. She's 19 and needs to realize that actions have consequences. It was probably a huge inconvenience for you, and it sounds like she needed a reality check. Not the jerk. Stephanie decided to bite the hand that feeds her. If she can't follow the rules, she can't stay. Your other family members can offer their own support if they are that concerned. Not the jerk. But why the comment about not being proud of your daughter for being a teen mother? If my mom had said something like that about me when I had my first baby at 16, I would have been heartbroken. This stigma over teen mothers really needs to stop. Being a mother is a huge accomplishment that you should definitely be proud of her for doing, whether it was intentional or not. Plus, she has a great supportive father who is there for her and their son. It's cool that you're letting them live with you rent-free, but are you doing enough for the baby? The way you say you're not proud of her, I hope you're supporting them enough financially since they are unable to work full-time. Are you buying them enough formula? Are you buying enough clothes and toys for baby? As grandma, I really hope you can step up and stop thinking lowly of your daughter for the miracle she experienced of childbirth. Do better. They did me out of my pay. I did them out of their company. Many years ago, I got a job with a marketing company during phone deregulation. It was the Wild West, and a lot of small, long-distance companies sprang up, all trying to get a piece of the pie. Eventually, they all got bought up by the bigger fish, but at the time, they were all paying marketing firms very well to score contracts for them to lock people in. I got a job with one of those marketing firms, a new age capitalism company that insisted we all do yoga and breathing exercises while they rang a little bell and gave us affirmations about how many contracts we were all going to sell and how much money we'd all make. The job was 100% commission, but I was always good at sales, so I looked at the pay scale and noticed that it was exponential, presumably to entice people to work hard with impossible payouts. We were allowed to work as many or as few hours as we wanted to, with the payout based on your weekly sales numbers. I decided I would give it a shot for 1 week to see how much I could realistically make before deciding whether I was willing to put up with the tasteless vegan snacks and mandatory voluntary yoga regime. For the next week, I pushed myself as hard as I could. For 7 days straight, I worked 14-hour days every single day, and used every trick and technique I had learned doing sales to score as many contracts as I possibly could. I figured this would tell me my maximum possible income and could decide on that basis whether to stay. At the end of the week, I had blown everyone else out of the water. In fact, I had not just gotten more contracts than anyone there had ever seen in a week. I had gotten more than any of them had seen in a month. Because of the exponential scale, I realized that I was making absolutely ridiculous amounts of money, over $10,000 a week. They had never expected anyone could actually hit those kinds of numbers. Coming in the next week, expecting a huge payday, I ended up with about 5% of what I expected. They told me there were problems with a lot of my contracts and that I would be allowed to fix them and submit them a few at a time over the next several weeks. These problems were things like an apostrophe wasn't quite clear or the dash in someone's phone number was slightly crooked. They were going to do me over. That night, I got a phone call from the company's office manager, Frank, who wanted to meet up for a drink. Curious, I agreed. Over beers, Frank told me that the owners of the company were in a panic because I would have bankrupted them. He said they spread out all my contracts on the floor of the office, then they crawled over them, inspecting each one and trying to figure out if I was committing some kind of fraud. When they comprehended that all of my contracts were legit, they decided that they had no choice but to do me over. Frank told me he had realized at that point that if they would do me over, they'd do him over too. And besides, he was tired of doing yoga. He asked me if I would be interested in going into business with him and go head-to-head with the bosses. I thought it sounded intriguing, but I asked him how he thought we could compete. Frank explained that he had found out they didn't actually have the contract for our city. They were acting as independent contractors for another company who had the contract to market the service in an entirely different city. They were poaching here because the person who did have the contract wasn't actively using it. We put together a pitch and approached the guy with the real contract, Joe, and told him about the people poaching his turf. We agreed that we'd split with him. We'd take the upfront money for each contract, and he'd get the back-end money down the road. It was a good deal for everyone, so Joe contacted the phone company and had them threaten the poachers with a big lawsuit if they didn't stop. A week later, Frank and I strolled into the office of our old employer. Most of the furniture and all of the yoga mats were gone, and there was just a table, a couple of filing cabinets, and a file box with the final pay envelopes for everyone. I made a show of counting my money to make sure that it was all there, and the two owners, the husband and wife, told Frank and I bitterly that they had had to take cash advances on their credit cards for this money, and asked me if I felt guilty for destroying their lives. I smiled and said, nope, and I left. Our marketing company made us a lot of money over the year until the company got bought up by Sprint and the gravy train ended. Am I the jerk for leaving the thrift store with an item that I paid for? I went into my local thrift store and immediately found a piece of furniture I wanted. In the past, I've been through the furniture section and seen receipts attached to items saying that they've been sold already and are no longer available. That was not the case with this table. Stoked, I asked an employee to help me move it to the register so I can pay for it. A nice dude helps me out by putting it on a dolly and rolling it up front for me. I pay for it, and he starts pushing the dolly out to my car. Lady comes out of the store behind us and is irate. She comes up with a temper, yelling that it's her table that we're wheeling out to my car. Confused, because there was no sold tag on this thing, I ask her if she has also paid for it. She says, no, but I told the manager I wanted it, and she set it aside for me. I feel awkward at first and just kind of freeze there for a minute while she goes back in to get the manager. I was considering going in and refunding it and giving it back. I did think about it. I actively decided that since I paid for it, I had essentially called dibs, and that the store manager should have had the woman pay for the item and put a receipt on the item as they've done in the past. So I look at the dude helping me lug this thing out to my car. He looks stunned and clearly is going to wait to see what happens. I decide not to wait. I tell him I'm not going to make him be any more involved, and I just pick up my furniture and start walking to the car. As soon as I'm finished loading it into the car, the manager comes out with a woman. The manager asks me expectantly if I'm going to give the furniture back to the lady. I ask the manager if the lady paid for it. She says, no, but we did put a hold on it for her. I tell her there was no signage indicating it was sold. It wasn't moved off of the floor, and no one stopped me when I asked for help moving it and checked out. The manager then tells me that if I don't go back in and return the table, that I'm banned from this thrift store and to never come back. So I told her I'm sorry that her staff had made a mistake, but that I had no intention of returning the item I paid for, got in my car, and noped out. I clearly upset this lady by not refunding and giving back this table. I feel bad that she was upset, but I did it anyway. I know I didn't commit a crime by taking a table I paid for, but am I the jerk? Should I have just given it to her? Not the jerk. This is how thrifting works. They're lucky that they have a policy of setting stuff aside or leaving a note on it. When I go to any type of quick sale process, I always tell a staffer and pay up front. Loitering and waiting with holds leads to situations like this. Also, the manager knew she made a mistake, and instead of owning up to it and maybe giving the lady a 10% discount for this oversight, she threatened you with a ban? What a crappy way to do business. Here's what the manager should have said. I'm really sorry, this is my mistake, but we promised this item to another customer. It's yours now that you've bought it, but if you're willing to give this back, we'll offer you a full refund plus some store credit to get a different item instead. And even then, OP still has the option to decline, at which point the manager should apologize to the other customer and offer them store credit instead. That's the only no jerks here result here. The manager really put you in a bad spot, basically making you look like a giant jerk for their mistake. If they were going to hold the item, they should have indicated it somewhere or moved it to the side. I'm going to say not the jerk for you and the lady. She trusted the manager to adequately hold the item. The manager is a major jerk. You're the jerk. This is why I don't shop at thrift stores. Too much riffraff. Plus, I have a good job, so I can actually afford to shop at real stores. I honestly think you should have just given her the table. She probably needs it more than you do, especially if she's shopping in a thrift store. I could never get over that nasty smell in there. It's so hard to describe, but it hits as soon as you walk in, and it's always the same smell, no matter which location you go to. Well, what would you have done in this situation? Would you have returned the table so the lady can buy it or not? Please let us know. If she had been very nice about it, I would have, but if she came at me with a nasty attitude like that, forget about it. Am I the jerk for listing everyone who has learned sign language from my sister to my parents? I'm getting a lot of trouble for this one, so I could use some outside opinions on if I should apologize or not. I, 16, male, am the middle kid, with my older sister being 23 and my younger sister being 13 now. 5 years ago, there was an accident, and my older sister, we'll call her Natalie, got banged up pretty badly. Most of it she got better from, but she's mute now from damage to her vocal cords. Natalie gets by very well with sign language. However, our parents have always refused to actually learn ASL. They always insisted that Natalie could write anything out, that text-to-speech was good enough if she didn't want to carry around a pen and paper. Most of her teachers were like that too, but I get it for them. She's just one student and they're busy. These are our parents. Natalie and I FaceTime a lot because I did learn sign language for her, and it's how she prefers to communicate. She texts my parents okay, but my parents want to use text to replace the long phone calls they had with their parents when they went away to college, and Natalie doesn't want to just sit around and text with our parents for hours at a time. They expect her to be sitting on the couch with the phone and replying as fast as possible in real time, and she's not interested. I overheard my parents complaining about this and insulting Natalie for it, and I blew up at them. I pointed out everyone who had learned sign language for Natalie. Me, multiple cousins, our grandparents, multiple aunts and uncles, the 2 boyfriends she's had after the accident, one of whom cheated on her, so he wasn't exactly Prince Charming, but he still learned, her current girlfriend, and her creative writing teacher in high school. So many people learned to sign for her, but never them. My parents got really angry at me and told me I couldn't understand, then grounded me. Then both of their sisters, who never agree on anything, called to tear into me. They told me that my parents both worked full-time, had 3 kids to raise, both had church responsibilities, and that Natalie and I were brats for expecting them to learn a new language on top of that. They sarcastically asked me what clubs and sports me and our little sister should have lost so my parents could spend time learning a new language when Natalie's hands worked fine. My aunts never agree on anything. We can't have activities with both sides of the family because they're so bad, but they both agree that Natalie and I are awful. So I guess I just wanted to come here and see if y'all agree that we're unreasonable and that I should apologize to my parents. Not the jerk. Parents should have been the first ones to learn ASL. If church responsibilities are more important than parental responsibilities, then they should get a reality check on what said church is teaching them. Also, it's not Natalie who wants those long phone calls, so they have to find a solution for them, not Natalie. Am I the jerk for refusing to give my parents my address? I, 24 female, am one of 2 kids. My older sister, who's 28, was the golden child, and honestly, I feel bad for her. My sister was a prodigy. She skipped 3 grades, was gifted in both academia and athleticism, and my parents made her life horrible. Her schedule was full: school, extracurriculars, sports, music lessons, dance lessons, etc. When I was very young, I was jealous of her. Then I turned 10 and started feeling really bad for her. She wasn't allowed to have any friends. They would hold her back. Free time, she could have the rest of her life to enjoy after finishing medical school, or even the freedom to choose her future career or her own hobbies. It was all planned for her to maximize her chances to get into Harvard for pre-med and then Johns Hopkins for med school. When she graduated high school, at 15, almost 16, my parents uprooted us because they couldn't allow her to go to college on her own. So we left Virginia to go to Massachusetts. I resented them so bad then, but I felt even more sympathy towards my sister because for years she's been dreaming about finally having some freedom while in college. They continued with their intense control over her life. I graduated high school back in 2016, then in 2018 I left the whole country. That was how much I couldn't stand them. I moved to France, went to school here, and I'm currently working here. When my sister got into med school, they still maintained their controlling attitude. Then sadly, in late 2019, she suffered a drug-induced psychotic break. To this day, she is still institutionalized because it developed into full-on schizophrenia. When all their hopes they had hung on her ended in nothing, it was because of them that she had started doing this. They tried to do the same thing to me. Sadly for them, I was already a self-sufficient adult on the other side of an ocean, and they had no control over me. They're my sister's legal guardians, so I couldn't cut them off. They're exactly the type of people who would limit my contact with her. And lately, they've been pestering me to give them my address. Apparently, they want to visit me and get to know my boyfriend. I refused, and I keep refusing. But I also feel a bit guilty. Them knowing my address does not mean that they would be dropping in every weekend. They live in a completely different country, and my refusal is making my mom very sad. Also, I have a lot of friends telling me that it is unreasonable. So, am I the jerk? Your parents sound like dangerous and manipulative people. I would stay low contact. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. Go no contact. Hire a lawyer to sue for the right of visitation and communication. Save any messages indicating that they're using visitation for blackmail or retribution. You never have to set foot in the country. Let the lawyer deal with it, as many states have some degree of visitation rights for adults under guardianship. Sorry you have parents like this, but you can't ever give them any control over you. If your sister was of sound mind, I'm sure her former self would tell you to let her go rather than get under their thumb. You can use lawyers to put their actions as a guardian under a microscope. Try to contest their guardianship. It isn't cheap, but you can dedicate yourself to breaking their control, make them miserable, or get them to capitulate. Sounds better than hiding or letting them win. Don't want to give me my last paycheck? Make that a double. This happened to me in spring of 2017. In 2016, I was unhappy at my current position with not very many hours and too much drama. I started shopping around for a new job. Got a few offers, nothing that I'd take, as the one I had allowed me to have weekends off so that I could work my second job. I eventually landed an interview with a brand new construction company. So I sat down, and who walks out? An acquaintance I work with on the weekends. We start chatting about this and that. It's a ski resort, so it was mostly about skiing, which tends to be very enthusiastic. So needless to say, I'm offered the job on the spot, as I have a real work reference right there. I took the job as it was exactly what I was looking for, with a work vehicle as a perk, an expense account. Turns out, that was me just spending my own money and getting reimbursed. One of many shady practices and red flags. Edit. This was supposed to be a company credit card, not a reimbursement account. Being American, I needed some healthcare. I ended up having to borrow money for a medical procedure. At the time, not realizing he offered this money on purpose so I couldn't leave. Or I could leave and actually owe him money, which I would have owed him a lot, so I'm stuck. About a year goes by, and I see one tradesman after another get hired on, then fired. It was a repeating pattern, so I knew my time was limited if I paid him back. I also knew I'd have a tough time getting paid, even if the amount earned was more than what I owed. So I began looking for another job. Found one easily enough. More perks, a way better reputable company. I knew I had time, so I planned my exit with only 3 days worked on the pay period. So when I received my direct deposit, I had only worked and was owed for 3 days. I could easily live with losing that money. So I go to the secretary and pay off my draw, get a receipt, and my balance is 0. Double check with the boss that we are square. Yes, he texts back, "Thank you for paying me back early. Thanks for the evidence." Boom, it all goes down in a crap show. I returned everything. Owner threatens to call the cops, says I owe him way more than I did, claims I broke everything in my vehicle. One of the beautiful things about a boss that is never on site is most everything is done by email or text. I send him screenshots of everything, including a picture of my 0 balance owed. Text back, I'll get my last check in the mail. Thanks for more evidence. 2 months go by. I called twice after a few weeks, got hung up on. Placed on hold, then hung up on. Oh, you want to hang up on me, huh? Let's see how the Department of Labor feels about it. File a wage claim with the Department of Labor. Lady straight up tells me there's not much she can do because all the boss has to do is dispute it. And then it will go to a hearing and be dragged out for possibly years over a few $100s. Email her everything. She compliments me on my thorough documentation and says I might have a case. She then tries to contact my former employer, gets hung up on, gets placed on hold. Then she got yelled at by the boss's girlfriend, who happened to be there filling in for the boss when he was in Mexico. "There is no way we owe that guy money. He was a real piece of work, and he owes us money, and I want to speak to your supervisor." No hearing was needed. "OP, here is your check. Please come by the Department of Labor to pick it up." I go to pick up my check. She then hands me a form and says that if I'm satisfied, check that box, but I'd like a more thorough investigation if one is warranted, and she strongly suggested that I check that box, so I did. 1 week later, I received another identical paycheck, which I had to go pick up. In the meantime, my friend who worked in the office started documenting everything from her side and had a similar experience when she quit. What a shocker. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.